Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Vanessa walked through the streets of the city, keeping behind the backs of passersby. For the first time in her life, she was a grown family woman following a man. And that man was her husband, Andrew. Was Jenna right? A coworker from work who lived near the place said she'd seen Andrew in a restaurant with a girl a couple times. Handsome, blonde, long-legged, stylish couple discussing something animatedly. Sometimes the lady cheerfully stroking Andrew on the shoulder. The dates were wrong, Vanessa asserted confidently. Between her and Andrew, there had always been a trusting, close relationship. They shared each other's joys and worries, told each other how the day had gone. No, of course, Jenna was wrong. She'd only seen the man a couple times in her life, so she confused him with someone else. Jenna was skeptical of marriage in general. The woman had met Andrew practically right in front of her eyes. And Jenna then confidently declared that the relationship had no prospects. Oh, friend, I'd be careful not to get enchanted before you're disappointed. Been there, done that. It hurts afterwards. Vanessa realized that there was some truth in what her colleague said. But next to Andrew, she felt so loved, so protected. He looked at her with loving tenderness, protected her, tried to please her. It could not be a deception. It wasn't a deception either. Declared in response to Vanessa's objections, the much-experienced Jenna. Now he really feels that you are the woman of his life. Love period, all that sort of thing. But time will pass. He will look at the situation with sober eyes and realize everything. Vanessa realized that maybe her friend was right. Andrew was so perfect, so handsome. The turquoise eyes on his tanned face alone are worth it. And those dimples on his cheeks that appear when Andrew smiles. Vanessa was ready to admire his smile endlessly. She had never felt that way about anyone before. Andrew, a lead engineer at a major oil company. He has nearly 100 people under him of intelligent, determined acumen. The man had a prestigious university under his belt. He was persuaded to stay in the capital. He didn't want to leave his hometown. His parents are already quite elderly here. Andrew is their only and very late child. The man could not leave his father's mother alone. So he came back, which, in his own words, he has never regretted. Andrew's parents are wealthy people. His father was once a big businessman by the standards of their city. He had his own dairy, which was once very profitable. Before that, the man was in the restaurant business in New York. But after the birth of his child, he decided to change his line of work. The family moved from the capital to a quiet provincial town with a developed infrastructure, but much more pleasant ecology. Always thought that children are more pleasant and easier to raise in small towns. This is how Anna, Andrew's mother, talked about the move many years ago. Vanessa had a perfect relationship with the Candles in spite of silly stereotypes. In a way, they replaced her parents, although they were more like grandparents in age. Her own. Vanessa remembered her mother and father vaguely. They had died when the girl was only 5 years old. They went to the forest for mushrooms, got confused. They were searched, then searched for a long time. But the Taita is dangerous and unpredictable. Vanessa's mom and dad joined the list of people missing in the forests. There were a lot of such cases then, and even now such cases are not rare. Anyway, little Vanessa was taken in by her grandmother, her paternal grandmother. She raised her granddaughter, tried to give her everything she needed. Vanessa adored her grandmother. But when the girl was only 20 years old, her only relative was gone. Heart age, Vanessa was left all alone. And so wanted the love of support of a close person next to her. That's probably why she contacted Mark. At first, he seemed like perfection. When the tragedy happened, the girl was in her 3rd year at the University of Economics. She got there thanks to her grandmother. From childhood, she had taught her granddaughter that she should learn to strive for a better life. Their small family, according to Vanessa, was not poor. At least, they certainly did not starve. But the grandmother kept lamenting that she could not take her granddaughter, show, and big cities other countries. The girl did not understand these worries, not quite satisfied with her life. I then in my time traveled around the world thanks to work. The old woman persuaded me. She worked as a train conductor all her life and visited many interesting places. Grandma loved to reminisce about those happy times, and her granddaughter just loved her stories. Well, what are your years it will still be? Vanessa was perplexed. But what is so interesting about traveling? Well, yes, grandmother tells quite fascinating. But why be upset that there is no money for traveling now? You can watch all that stuff on TV. Then, when Andrew showed Vanessa the world, she realized what Grandma meant. It was only a pity to share it with a relative, impressions Vanessa could no longer share. Andrew, this is the best gift that fate has given Vanessa. He literally changed the life and outlook of a woman. Next to her spouse, she always felt at peace. They have already been together for so many years, and nothing has changed. All the same tenderness, admiration. Both have become each other's kin. They haven't been hurt by the household as many mourned. Andrew still looks at his wife with love. He still tries to surprise and please her. The prophecies of acquaintances about the futility of this relationship, including Jenna's predictions, did not come true, or they did. Maybe it is now that Vanessa will recognize her husband. On the other hand, why was he out on the street at this time? Andrew's supposed to be home taking care of their sick son. What's he doing here? Probably in a hurry to meet that hot blonde Jenna told me about. He's about to find out. The woman's heart pounded, starting to give her a headache. She was used to trusting her husband with everything. And now, following him through the streets of the city, she felt a mixture of the most contradictory feelings. Anxiety, excitement, shame, guilt, all at once. Vanessa didn't understand what her husband was doing now in the center of the city, but she knew he should be at home at this moment looking after little Frank. One of the twins was sick and didn't go to daycare today. Vanessa didn't have a chance to take a sick day. She's busy at work, with a report and an inspection coming in. But Andrew, he was able to work remotely from home today. What was a man supposed to be doing right now? Work and look after his son at the same time. But for some reason, he's here rushing down the wide street somewhere, and Vanessa follows him to uncover his secret at last. If it was something work-related, Andrew would surely call his wife, warn her and tell her who he left Frank for. The baby's only 3 years old. He can't be home alone yet. Plus, he had a high fever this morning. No. Andrew is a sensitive and caring father. He adores his children and would never leave any of them in danger. Surely there's someone with Frank right now, a nanny or a grandmother. Andrew's mother. But why doesn't she know about this? And why would Andrew be here in the center of town? His company's office is about 10 kilometers away, and Andrew looks kind of strange. The man always wears pants and a shirt to work. There's a strict dress code. Now Andrew's wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And Vanessa couldn't remember any of these things in her husband's closet. Either something new, or on the contrary, old and therefore long forgotten. Strange, of course, Andrew never liked jeans and t-shirts. He preferred other, not bright colors. Now he was wearing an orange polo. That made it even more confusing. Vanessa followed her husband's footsteps, noting all the new strange details of the stumpy sneakers of an unknown brand. That's odd. Her husband favored name brands, not out of snobbery. No, that wasn't in the man's character at all. Despite his high salary and brilliant career, he was simply more comfortable in branded quality shoes. Where did he get those sneakers from the market? And Andrew looked subtly different. Different look, light stubble, but usually shaved face and tiredness. But of course, it was Andrew. Vanessa would recognize her husband in any image, the light spring, the gestures, the gait, the beautiful, swarthy skin tone, the bright turquoise eyes that once surrounded a woman's head. She still often admired them. Andrew kept walking forward. Vanessa followed him. Why did he go on foot? Her husband usually traveled by car. He wasn't particularly fond of walking. Vanessa was already long late for work since lunch, came out of the office to have a snack, suddenly noticed her husband, and of course, hurried after him. No big deal. She warned Svetlana that she would think of something to say to her superiors. It wasn't the first time the friends had helped each other out. So Jenna, she's got nothing to worry about. Finally, Andrew pulled into one of the restaurants, which were plentiful on both sides of the main street. Vanessa froze. Jenna's words that she had seen her husband in a cafe with a beautiful blonde were going over and over in her head. A coworker friend had told her about it just the other day. Vanessa was then sure that Jenna was mistaken. After all, Jenna at one time she did not believe to the last that Vanessa with Andrew everything will work out. About what the friend repeatedly stated out loud. Jenna's own experience showed that it was simply impossible. Andrew is handsome, promising, wealthy, young, and free. And she's Vanessa too, of course, beautiful. You can't argue with that, but she's still a different bird. She lives in a cramped, one-room apartment inherited from her grandmother. She works in a small firm as an economist for pennies. And most importantly, she's raising her daughter alone. Who needs someone else's child? Is such a prince a match for a lady with a trailer? Question Jenna. She'll go out for a walk. And I wouldn't count on a serious thing if I were you. The words of my colleague sounded quite logical and convincing. Indeed, why would Andrew want someone else's child? And his parents would probably object. At that time, Vanessa was not yet acquainted with her mother-in-law and could not even imagine how happy they would be with Emily and her daughter. Emily, yet meeting Mark had a positive side to it. He had given her the priceless gift of a beautiful, healthy daughter and vanished, just vanished from her life. His commitments gravitated toward family life. The guy wasn't ready. Well, you can't blame him for that. Leaving the baby was entirely Vanessa's decision, and it wasn't an easy decision. The woman still shuddered at the desperate situation she found herself in almost 13 years ago. Vanessa was only a few steps away from the biggest mistake of her life. It was logical and easier for her to have an abortion at that time. What a blessing that a very young Vanessa didn't. Rainier had already turned 12. Tall, slender, big eyes. Outwardly, she resembles Mark, but no one is in the least bit upset about it. Mark, what can be said? He is a real beauty, dark almond, colored eyes, black, shiny hair. There was a touch of Oriental blood in him. Black cheekbones, well-defined lips. All of this was passed on to Emily. She was already a teenage girl. When Vanessa went out with her daughter, she often caught glances from boys and even older guys in the arena. Just a little longer, and her daughter would blossom into a beautiful young woman. The thought that she might not have been at all. Vanessa sometimes had goosebumps running down her spine. When her grandmother died, Vanessa was left all alone. On her passport, she had long since been an adult of 20 years as Vanessa, but in fact, the girl felt almost like a child. Her grandmother always took care of her, cooked delicious meals for her granddaughter, calmed her down, even woke them up in the morning for university. She wrapped Vanessa with care and love as a warm, cozy blanket. And now the girl was unbearably cold and homesick, and scared. Vanessa missed her grandmother desperately. She cried a lot during that difficult period. In public, of course, she kept to herself, but at home, she let her feelings out, sobbing, reading her grief. The realization that she was all alone frightened her and even drove her into a panic. How to live in the world if you are not needed and not interesting to anybody, if you do not need a reliable shoulder of your favorite person. And just at that moment she met Mark, dark-haired, good-looking guy who worked part-time as a janitor. Always cheerful and smiling and energetic and agile. Always positive. Vanessa noticed, of course, that the young janitor looked back at her when she was coming home from the steam. But guys like that, they probably don't miss a skirt at all. After a while, Mark began to greet Vanessa and smile broadly. It was to her that the girl could not stay sad and sorrowful. At times like this, Mark's smile was too infectious. No one could resist. As if imperceptibly in the girl arose sympathy for this guy. Their relationship had grown to the point where they sometimes talked about things around the house. Now Vanessa knew that Mark had come here from the village. His family was there. He served in the army, went to college, but money is scarce. His parents are not wealthy, to say the least, so he works part-time. Mark knew a lot of things about Vanessa too. For example, the fact that she lived all alone and that the girl studied in a prestigious university of economics. One day, Mark asked Vanessa out on a date. The girl was taken aback by such an offer. Mark was clearly very embarrassed, blushing, stammering, looking down at his feet. It was not at all like the conversation of a cheerful young man. And that's why it looked especially sweet and touching. Of course she didn't. Mark didn't have the money. So the young people went to the embankment, walked, talked, held hands, then kissed. Vanessa felt herself drawn more and more to Mark. He was so nice, so interesting. He had just turned 22. But in his years, he had seen and learned so much that some of them had never even dreamed of. Her life was relatively quiet and prosperous, whereas Mark had to work from the age of 11 to help the family and the army to pass, and in trouble. Serious get in and get out of them. Constant adventures. Mark walked Vanessa home to the driveway. The girl suddenly realized that she didn't want to part with him at all, but she didn't dare to invite him to her place. Then she didn't. Later, Mark did move in with her, and Vanessa was happy with him for a long time, almost 2 years. Mark masterfully fried potatoes and scrambled eggs and cleaned the apartment in a flash. All this guy did much better than Vanessa, who was raised like a princess by her grandmother, because she cherished and pitied him. And he also knew how to fix faucets and repair furniture. Life had taught him all that. Most of Vanessa's time was taken up with studying. Mark, on the other hand, was not particularly in need of science. He was listed in the construction technician's office, but he hardly ever showed up. He preferred to make money there. However, it was not so good either. Mark's casual earnings and a part-time janitor's salary and Vanessa's social scholarship. That's all there was to the budget. Had to save money on everything. It was a little frustrating for the guy, as he wanted a beautiful life. But Vanessa was happy as it was. The main thing is that Mark is a loving person, so sensitive, so understanding. He always knew when Vanessa needed support and gave it to her. The guy was never stingy with words and generously bestowed the girl with compliments, from which she melted. But Mark often went out with friends without Vanessa, and she didn't mind because she had no time to go out anyway, because she had a lot of projects to do at school. Sometimes, though, when I looked at Vanessa going to her friends, I was jealous. I wondered if there were any girls there, and Mark is so handsome, so sociable. Who can resist him? But the guy assured that he didn't notice anyone but Vanessa, and he didn't need anyone at all. He's happy as he is. It's just friends. Guys will sit and talk. It's like a relaxation for us guys, you know? Vanessa nodded, but still stayed home not with a calm heart. Her intuition told her that not everything was as smooth as Mark said. But the girl consciously drowned out that weak inner voice. 2 years flew by like a day. Vanessa was already in her final year of college. Mark was also finishing his technical degree. Soon they would both be professionals, able to get jobs. And then at last, there would be no need to save money on the essentials. Maybe even a trip to the sea. That would be wonderful. One February morning, Vanessa realized she was expecting a baby. Of course, she and Mark hadn't planned any children yet. They were still on their own 2 feet, barely getting by. But an unplanned pregnancy is not an exceptional case. It happens quite often. Vanessa's not the first, and she won't be the last. People manage somehow, and yet the girl was scared. She even had sweat on her back when she looked at the test with 2 strips, which she made to know for sure how Mark would react. Probably scared at first too, but he's so all spry, so experienced. The guy's certainly not gonna lose it. He will say that everything will be fine, will support, as always, will smile his trademark smile, and Vanessa will immediately feel calm. Except Mark's reaction was very different. A child. The guy even recoiled from Vanessa. After hearing the news, what kind of baby would he be sure of? Surely 2 tests came back positive. This is such a bad time. You understand, don't you? Vanessa nodded. Of course, she understood everything perfectly. But what to do if this little man was already living under her heart? She felt frustrated and resentful. She thought Mark's reaction would be very different. The money for the abortion had to come from somewhere. The guy was talking to himself, as if to himself. Should I borrow it from Alex? Hearing the scary word, Vanessa was startled. What are you talking about? The girl instinctively grabbed her still absolutely flat stomach, as if protecting it. This was something she had never even thought of. Nico. Mark pulled himself together and spoke in a gentle yet firm voice. You realize we're not in a position to be parents right now, don't you? What can we give to this baby? Are we breaking bread for water right now? We're about to get our diplomas. You can go work construction. I'll get maternity pay. We'll manage. Vanessa thought it was Mark who would comfort her and say those very words. But as it happened, she had to take the initiative in her own hands. The news of the baby had thrown Mark completely off balance. Of course, he would later be ashamed of his cowardice phrases. Nothing they never reproach him for them. Though it was certainly very hurtful to hear. Mark convinced Vanessa over and over again that they could not keep the baby. Painting depressing pictures of the future, he said he wasn't ready for such responsibility. And the girl suddenly, at some point, gives in to his persuasion. He's right about everything. They have no money. They haven't even learned yet. They're cramped in a small one-bedroom, and then there's the baby. The baby needs a lot of money, diapers, medicines, clothes, from which the infant grows at a breakneck speed. And she will not be able to work for a long time. When the child grows up and goes to the garden, no one will need such a specialist without experience. And she will have to throw her diploma on the shelf and work as a cleaner or a cashier in a supermarket. Is this the future we dreamed of? Mark asked. Are you worthy of more? Maybe I do need to see a doctor. Sadly, Vanessa sighed. After being carefully handled by the talented manipulator Mark, she had seen no other way out then. The guy's influence had worked. He had gotten his way. Good girl, shown Mark. We'll still have the baby. Don't worry. In a few years, we'll give him all the nice clothes, toys, his own room. But now is not the time. Vanessa called the clinic that same day and made an appointment for the procedure. Then she was in a desperate situation and thought she was doing everything right. In the morning, the girl went to the hospital with a heavy heart. In her bag, she had all the necessary things she had been told to take with her: slippers, gown, tape. Vanessa will have to spend the whole day in the hospital and will be released home only by evening. And that was if all was well. There was a line at the emergency room. Vanessa sat on a couch in the corner and looked at people for nothing. She was pounding. She could hardly contain her trembling. She wished Mark were there right now, holding her hand, stroking her back, assuring her that everything would be all right. But he was off on another part-time job. It's the right thing to do. They need the money, especially since they had to pay a large sum for this very procedure this month. Next to Vanessa sat a woman in her 40s. Well-groomed, beautiful, expensively and tastefully dressed. Exquisite manicure, fashionable haircut. Vanessa thought that she would like to look like that in 20 years, except that the woman's eyes were very sad. A man approached the woman. Probably her husband, a wealthy couple. Okay, I've done the paperwork. You'll be called soon. He put his hand on his companion's shoulder. Everything will be fine. For some reason, Vanessa immediately thought that this woman also wanted to get rid of an unwanted pregnancy. Her husband spoke the same words as Mark. It's gonna be okay. That's comforting. Really, why would they want people their age? The baby's probably an accident. In years before what could be okay, Vanessa's neighbor raised her eyes to her husband. What could be good about this whole situation? 11. Echo's fifth frozen pregnancy. Again, these painful procedures, treatment, recovery, and then all over again. You could see that the woman was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. In the eyes of her companion was so much pain, so much sympathy. He did not know how to help his wife and what to say to her words, so he just hugged her. How stupid was I? Scared then that I cannot cope. I was just finishing school. University was ahead. A career. The woman was almost whispering. My son would be 24 years old now. I knew it was a boy. I felt it right away. And now I'm paying for that mistake for the rest of my life. It's my ass. I'm right not to have any more children. It's a punishment. The man continued silently soothing his wife, stroking her back, her hair, squeezing her palms in his hands. He could not find the right words. She didn't look at the adult couple, eyes wide. She understood everything from their short dialogue. Long ago, when they were high school students, This woman had a termination of pregnancy, and now she could not have children because of its consequences. She agonizes, worries, spends a lot of money and a lot of time to realize her dream of motherhood. But it doesn't work. Vanessa suddenly realized that she will never get rid of her baby boy. She already loves it, even though it's just a cluster of cells. That's what Mark called their baby when he insisted on aborting it. Vanessa is all grown up now. She's almost finished university. With her diploma in her pocket and Mark by her side. Vanessa is not alone. Together they'll make it. The girl ran out of the clinic as if chased by a pack of dogs. People looked at her in surprise. Once outside, Vanessa breathed a sigh of relief. She felt as if she had just escaped a great misfortune. Vanessa put her hand on her stomach and smiled. Her baby was with her, and that little girl. In that moment, Vanessa realized clearly that what she had under her heart was not a cluster of cells, but her daughter, beloved, beautiful, healthy. They would meet in 7 months. Mark didn't like Vanessa's story, but it wasn't serious, he said flatly. I'll take you to the clinic tomorrow. You shouldn't have left. It was the first time they'd had an argument. Vanessa insisted on her own way. Mark was proving her wrong. His arguments had seemed so logical and right before. Now Vanessa wondered how she had ever agreed with them. Yes, it will be difficult for us. For a while, the girl said, but we're both very mature. We can handle it. I can't take that step. Finally, Mark slammed the door and walked out into the dark March evening. Vanessa thought he would cool down, come back with an apology. After all, Mark had always understood her so well before. The same would happen now. But Mark didn't show up until the morning. Drunk with aggression, he began to insist again that the child must be gotten rid of. I have a right to decide that too. And it's only Vanessa who concerns me. It was impossible to change her mind now. And the boy quickly realized that. He was a good judge of character. They hardly spoke to each other during this period. Vanessa asked the guy some questions, but he didn't dignify her with answers. He only came home to spend the night. And not always. Nico hoped that time would pass, and the man she loved would get used to the idea that he would soon become a father. Everything will be fine. Between them, after all, such a warm and close relationship. Of course, they will make up sooner or later. Mark will realize everything. He'll be ashamed. But one day, coming home from university, Vanessa found that Mark's things were not at home. The girl realized at once. She'd hoped in vain that her boyfriend would be supportive. She had wrongly thought that he just needed time to get used to the situation. Mark wasn't going to take responsibility for the baby. Nikon wasn't likely to love her that much either. Not at that moment. Much later, the girl suddenly realized that Mark had been using her. Living in her apartment. Rent in their city is not a cheap service. Mark's earnings were obviously not enough for such an expensive pleasure. Besides, no one took care of him, cooked for him, washed and ironed his clothes and cleaned. Mark lived on everything. This at first he amazed not his culinary talents and household network, but then the constant fatigue from the supposedly hard work and going out with friends. As if unnoticeably, Vanessa took the whole household on her shoulders and was happy that she was doing something for the person she loved. And yet Vanessa tried to find him. How is it? Gone, vanished, didn't even say goodbye. That's not right. Anyway, the baby Vanessa's carrying, the baby needs a father. But it turns out Mark's been a dropout for almost 2.5 years. That's the news. So Mark's been spending his time in the middle of school in the middle of nowhere. Wow, what a masterful liar he is. He was so convincing when he said he was going to his classes, but he wasn't. One of the guys from, hearing by chance that Nicholas would find out about Mark, approached her himself. You, Mark, are not looking for anything yet. He clarified. Vanessa nodded at him. Well, I thought so. It's a rare name. I don't think so. We've got a lot of Marks here. Tell me what happened. He was head over heels in love. Then he borrowed a nice sum of money and ran away. No, the shocked girl shook her head. He just disappeared. We lived together for almost 2 years. Everything was fine. We lived in your apartment, probably at your expense. I don't think he was paying for anything. Vanessa suddenly realized the guy was right. Mark earned, of course, from time to time, but he spent his money mostly on himself. Stylish clothes, gadgets. Vanessa bought occasionally inexpensive flowers or fruit baskets. The girl was so happy with this attention, and so happy that there was a favorite person next to her, that she simply did not notice the obvious. The guy's right. Mark has been living off her. If you look at the situation sober, something like that, but not quite. Not really. Mark still cooked the occasional nice dinner, fixed things around the house. Always wondered how Vanessa was doing. If so, according to the judge, he was giving something too, not just taking. Not really, the boy mumbled thoughtfully. Well, anyway, you're glad he's out of your life. He's an opportunist, a cleaning fish, a beggar from the village, unwilling to study and work, but dreaming of a beautiful life. From the outside, it was clearly visible how he sought to be friends with guys from wealthy families and daughters of rich parents, to pull resources from them. At first, he succeeded, but then everyone in tech realized who he was, and his tricks didn't work here anymore. But there's plenty of majors outside of college, so Mark went hunting elsewhere. And then he was expelled from here for failing grades. Vanessa flapped her eyes, trying to digest what she had heard. But I'm not the daughter of rich parents, quite the opposite. I have an apartment and no permanent source of income. Vanessa thought and nodded. There you go. I'm sorry, of course. But it's written all over your face that you're naive and inexperienced. It would be a piece of cake to fool someone like that. Mark had no place to live. Why are you picking on you? Lived a little in a safe harbor, not thinking about the fact that there's no money to pay the rent. Confidently, all the while he continued his hunt. Vanessa thought for a moment. Yes, indeed, Mark often disappeared with some of his friends, about whom the girl knew nothing at all. Maybe this guy was right. And now he must have found someone more suitable. So he's off into the sunset. A girl should be glad that this freeloader got away with poverty. And if suddenly, when he shows up after another failure, don't even let them on your doorstep. Here's my advice. Vanessa didn't believe this guy then because it was very hard to realize that the person you were so in love with wasn't who he pretended to be. Overcoming her natural shyness, Vanessa interviewed a few more people, choosing those who were older than high school seniors, practically graduates. And yes, some of them remembered Mark. They responded to the young man just as the first guy had. Vanessa returned home in shot feelings. It was like the ground had been knocked out from under her feet. Vanessa had a different picture in her head for 2 years. Beautiful, right. But it turns out Mark was using her. When he found out about the victim's pregnancy, the sneaky guy realized what he was up against. Liability for child support. A baby in a tiny one-bedroom. Problems for life, or at least for the first 18 years after the baby is born. Too expensive a price to pay for free housing and not so luxurious munchies. So he ran away. He's probably out of town by now. No one keeps Mark here. Then Vanessa thought about the baby, how she would raise it. Would she be able to handle it? The girl couldn't know that. But she realized one thing, even though her situation was desperate, this child would still be born to Vanessa. There wasn't a soulmate in the world. And here Vanessa's daughter felt that she was going to have a girl. Together, they would cope with all the troubles of life by themselves. And then there was a difficult, very difficult period. The diploma was the last responsible session of state exams. Vanessa studied like a curse from morning till night. She didn't think about Mark anymore. She just didn't have time. And then came the terrible toxicosis. Vanessa felt nauseous and confused. She felt dizzy all the time. But no one canceled her exams. And no one was going to make any favors for a pregnant student. Vanessa knew she had to get that diploma. She couldn't leave everything at the finish line, even though it was very hard to study in such a state. Vanessa was happy about one thing at the antenatal clinic, where she registered for pregnancy. She was told at every appointment that everything was going according to plan. The baby is healthy. It is developing as it should. These words of doctors encouraged the girl and warmed her soul. A few months flew by unnoticeably. The diploma is behind her. The state exams are passed on excellent. Vanessa is happy and proud of herself. She's done it. But what's next? The pregnancy was already past the first half. You could barely see the belly yet, so guessed slightly. But no one around had yet guessed that Vanessa was expecting a baby. The dean, after the defense of the diploma, unexpectedly invited the successful student to his office. Nico is a little surprised by this. She went up to the second floor and did not dare. Knocked on the door of the dean's office. "Come in." Vanessa saw Peter Sergeyevich behind the desk, always strict and serious. Now he was smiling broadly. Merry sparks sparkled in his eyes. "You are a wonderful student." So he began the conversation. "You have had good grades all the years, and you have performed well in the final tests. That's why I recommended that you be recruited from the factory. They need smart young economists. Do you know what the salaries are?" Of course, Vanessa knew. She never dreamed of ever getting a job there. Those who worked at the factory lived in huge new apartments and houses and drove expensive cars. In their town, the phrase factory worker even became a household name. It meant wealthy people who could not deny themselves anything. Vanessa even felt a little dizzy at the prospect, but then a daughter moved in her belly, bringing her mother back to earth. Who needs an employee without experience, who in a couple of months will go on maternity leave? It's easy to deceive, to hide a pregnancy nowadays. You can barely see your stomach, so there's no problem with that. But you'd still have to confess, hear a lot of accusations, set people up. Vanessa wasn't capable of that. Realizing that a dainty position was slipping away from under her nose, the girl almost cried. This job could solve all her problems in one fell swoop. Wanted to work. Really wanted to plunge into practice. Such was her fate. "Peter, I have something to tell you about this offer." Vanessa still had a faint hope that things would work out. Now the dean's gonna say that pregnancy is no big deal. Work for a couple of months, go on maternity leave, and then go back to the factory. They'll wait for such a promising economist. But the man, having heard the graduate's confession, gave a puzzled quack. That nothing can be done there. Is it a long-term or what? Just such offers happen once in a lifetime. It's a pity to miss the chance. Girl, you're a good economist. You'll make a great one. But I'm strapped for cash. You're needy. I can tell. I know your story, that's why I decided to help. Vanessa shook her head negatively. She understood everything the dean was saying. But there was nothing to be done. And the kid would never get rid of it for anything, even if she hadn't missed the deadline yet. The girl walked home and sobbed to her heart's content, paying no attention to the passers-by regarding her. It was better that the offer had never happened. Such prospects, a completely different life. Was it hard to turn down a place like this? But she didn't want to cheat, and she didn't know how to set people up. It wasn't in her nature. In addition, Peter said that it would not have worked out for her, because when hiring a factory employee undergoes a medical examination, so it was just the way it was. She didn't calm down at home. She pulled herself together. She will have a baby. She needs to be strong. In addition, before the birth of a daughter must solve a lot of issues. The first is material. Now Vanessa will not receive a stipend to work. A girl who is about to go on maternity leave will not be taken either. But it's for a job in her specialty. And there are other positions. They do not require high qualifications, and sometimes even official registration. They don't pay much, but Vanessa needs something to live on. Not only that, just to live, she will have to save some amount of money, not to work during the period when the daughter will be very tiny. Yes, the state provides some kind of allowance for children. Vanessa has already learned that it's a pittance. You can't live on that, and Vanessa is an honor student. She went to work as an entryway cleaner at the place where Mark used to work as a janitor. The girl ruled the stairwells in the early morning and late evening, when there were not so many people. The pay was good by Vanessa's standards. She had enough to live on and managed to save a little. Of course, the girl wasn't shocking. But after her grandmother was gone, she was used to saving money, so she didn't worry, especially about it. Physical labor suddenly turned out to be the best sedative, heavy, sad thoughts as if by themselves erased from her head. Vanessa even felt joy when instead of the dirty stairs, she saw the shining clean ground in front of her eyes. There was something soothing about it, even calming. At the same time, the girl was looking for earnings on the internet. She realized that she would not be able to wield a rag for long. The belly was growing by the hour, not by the day. It was simply impossible to hide it. And of course, it prevented her from bending over and stretching properly. And it was dangerous to carry a bucket of water. You never know. And Vanessa found another way to earn money, even more successful than the last one. And most importantly, a small child was not a hindrance. It turned out that hundreds of students across the country do not want to write term papers and essays on their own, download ready-made works. Not an option. Teachers have long known them by rote. Yes, and online verification greatly complicates the situation. Here came the demand for people who can write such works for money. They just could, and how could? She even breathed a sigh of relief when she realized that her university knowledge would help her in such a difficult situation. Vanessa quit her job because she could no longer clean entrances and went deeper into her new job, which she liked very much. The girl was afraid that during her maternity leave her knowledge would be forgotten, outdated, erased. But now she would be aware of everything that was happening in the economy. Vanessa worked and felt like pumping her professionalism. This, of course, could not help but please. The girl managed to collect enough money to prepare for her baby girl all the necessary diapers for the first time, and also bottles, overalls, decay race Vanechka. It turned out that the little man needs so much of everything. Vanessa even bought a stroller. Not a new one, of course. New ones cost like an airplane wing. She got it from a hand-me-down ad. Wonderful transportation for the princess tender pink stroller with beautiful flowers on the side. In excellent condition, by the way. In due time was born little Emily. When the baby was placed on Vanessa's chest in the hall, the young mommy even cried from the accumulated emotions. Now she is not alone. Now she is a mom. It is, of course, very difficult and responsible. But what a joy it is. Days in the maternity hospital with a little daughter turned out to be an incredibly happy time. She didn't have to work. She didn't have to clean or cook. She was invited to the canteen 5 times a day and was provided with clean diapers for her daughter every day. Beauty. Sometimes the girl would look out the window at the festive discharge parties thrown by new moms, relatives. Balloons, laughter, songs, fun, crowds, relatives, and friends. All of them joyfully welcoming the newest member of the family. Was asking mom for flowers? Vanessa smiled as she watched these scenes, but also sad, of course. No one is waiting for her like that. Only she herself is excited about Emily's arrival. But suddenly Vanessa was wrong. When the girl with such a pilot in her arms went to the porch of the maternity hospital, a small crowd was waiting for her there. A couple of classmates, a few coworkers. They were all smiling. There were flowers and balloons. Vanessa almost cried to the point of tears. The girl was put in a cab and sent home. Her friends walked her back to her apartment. Someone had to carry balloons, flowers, and packages with gifts for the baby. So Vanessa had a grand discharge, and then began the everyday life of a young mother. Nico got used to the new role as not as easy as planned before the birth. Sleepless nights, inexperience, unpredictability, her daughter's behavior, and fears. With the arrival of the baby, Vanessa has new fears that she could not even think of before. What if Emily chokes while feeding? What if the rash on the baby's body, a symptom of a terrible disease? Why is her daughter crying so much? Maybe she needs medical attention. And I had to work too, because the child's allowance seemed quite tiny. There were such moments when the young mother with one hand was nomadic daughter, and with the other hand was building another term paper, because the deadlines were pressing. Vanessa slept little during this difficult period. There was absolutely nowhere to wait for help. That's why she had to deal with the child herself, and to work, and to keep the house clean. After all, she had to go to the clinic and walk with the baby every day. Vanessa's skis slimmed down under her eyes. At that time, there were always deep shadows. She sometimes didn't even have time to sign out for the day. Curled her long tangled hair into a bump at the back of her head in the morning, hoping to tidy up her head a little later, and remembering it was past 0 o'clock. And yet, despite all these difficulties, no one has ever regretted their decision to keep the child. On the contrary, looking at her daughter, she was sometimes horrified at what she could do. After all, she had already come to the clinic, had already taken a coup, had already decided on a terrible deed. I wonder what would not have been heard than the conversation between that woman and her husband. Vanessa chased such thoughts away from herself. Now she did not even want to think about it. Emily grew up to be a calm, trouble-free child. Everything was on time and her teeth grew when needed, and she sat up according to plan. And she went to school ahead of schedule. Vanessa had no one to talk to at home. She very much missed human contact and therefore constantly talked to her daughter. It is probably because of this that Emily spoke at an age when other children do not even try to say their first words yet. Moms on the playground, looking at the fictional cute little girl, amazed, and Vanessa's heart floods in joy and maternal pride. She has a wonderful daughter, the best. How lucky is she to have her? At the age of 2, Emily went to kindergarten. By the way, the girl very quickly got used to the new place of stay no tears, no tantrums, as if the little girl understood that there was no other way out, and did not create unnecessary problems for her mother. Emily was not even sick during the period of adaptation, like other children. Realizing that the daughter is attached to a certain, took up the search for a job in her specialty. Earnings on the internet is of course good, but still the money is small and unstable. The young mother had to save on everything, and so wanted to buy toys and beautiful dresses for her daughter, and to pamper herself at least sometimes. Vanessa had studied for 5 years for a reason. It's time to look for a job in her specialty. No more red diploma on the shelf dusty. Of course, Vanessa encountered difficulties. An employee with no experience and with a small child in her arms. Now she's going to have to take endless sick days. We know you young moms. But my daughter attends the garden for a long time and does not get sick. There's no problem with that. You all say that, or you're not suitable for us. We need someone with experience. You can't handle it. Vanessa went to job interviews like she was going to work, and everywhere she went she was met with the same thing. It was confusing. Where can I get experience if they won't take me anywhere without it? Vanessa once approached a recruiter with a direct question. The woman who conducted the interview was confused for the first few seconds. That's not my problem. And yet one day luck smiled on a girl at a furniture repair company. An economist was urgently needed. The salary offered was not particularly large, so the queue of applicants for the position was not standing. And the person was needed right now. Vanessa was hired despite her lack of experience and the presence of a small child. There was no time for such subtleties. Vanessa quickly proved herself. She did her work faithfully. Everything had time and ideas to improve accounting. The girl finally got to work in her specialty. Management, of course, quickly appreciated her zeal. The young employee was respected. She even raised her salary. "We need such enthusiasts," the boss often said. Vanessa felt a pleasant warmth from these praises. A bonus to her favorite work and a good salary was communication, a team. Grown-up people. How did the girl miss all this? For 2 years, she talked only with her little daughter, and hear jokes, tea parties, exchanging news and opinions. All this was sorely missed. At the same firm, the girl met Jenna. They were almost the same age and therefore quickly became friends. Jenna often came to visit Vanessa and invited her to her house. The girl still lived with her parents. They had a lot of common topics for conversation. However, the friends' opinions on certain issues differed, which sometimes led to heated arguments. But it was also very interesting and exciting. Life got better. Vanessa worked, got good money. Now she did not have to save money on food and clothes. Vanessa even managed to save up for a summer trip to the sea with Emily. Luckily, the young mother had volunteered to go with them and Jenna. It was a wonderful vacation, which was then repeated several more times. Emily delighted in her successes. She grew up a beautiful girl, very much like Mark, but the character and learning abilities of the little girl went to her mother. Emily quickly and effortlessly learned to read, write, and count before school. She always went to kindergarten with a book. She also drew wonderfully. I could not be happy, but my treasure. But Jenna's friend didn't have a good personal life. She often went on dates, started light novels, and then shared with a friend over a glass of wine another disappointment. Maybe it's the men. Maybe they really are all assholes. Like yours. He left you with a potbelly and ran away. I don't know what to say. Vanessa shook her head. You know, I don't have much experience in these things. Maybe you're right, but Vanessa didn't really think so. She knew that there were many wonderful men in the world, kind, brave, caring. She just didn't want to argue with Jenna. She was already in a shooting mood. Of course, Vanessa sometimes thought about the fact that she needed a man next to her, a reliable shoulder, a support, a wall, behind which you can hide from the hardships of life, because pulling all alone, and it is very hard. There is no one to share her worries with. She herself would be happy to take care of this man, to surround him with love and care. And Emily would have a father who would be freaking out with her on the street and carrying the girl on his shoulders. Clearly that's not enough. Vanessa has seen the eyes her daughter uses to see off the father and little girl couples. She doesn't say anything out loud. She doesn't want to upset her mom, but Vanessa notices everything herself. But where to find such a prince? Yes, and when there's a house, a job, a daughter. Vanessa never went anywhere. Sometimes, of course, Jenna would take her out to a bar or a cafe. Emily was old enough to spend a few hours alone. But still, the woman's heart wasn't in the right place during those times. She kept thinking about how her baby was doing. I couldn't relax. What's wrong with you? Like a frying pan getting angry. Jenna, look at the way those cool guys at the next table are looking at us. They're gonna come over to meet us. You know, I should probably get going. You were always so touchy, Jenna. Whenever something interesting comes along, you just run. Jenna couldn't quite understand her friend. She hadn't had kids herself. She had no idea what it was like to worry about her blood daughter and the anxieties associated with a child she didn't know either. By the way, Jenna is still single. She has occasional stormy romances, but they all end the same way. The woman is once again disappointed in another cavalier, or he himself disappears over the horizon without explanation. When Andrew appeared in Vanessa's life, she at first did not even want to talk about it to her friend. She had just gone through a difficult breakup and was in her feelings. And here Vanessa is with her happiness. And the astute Jenna figured it all out. Are you seeing someone? Sort of. How did you know? Did your eyes give you away? Jenna grinned. Come on, tell me, who is he? How did you meet? Vanessa had to tell her friend everything. She didn't mind. I wanted to share this story with my friend. All the more so because it really turned out to be a fairy tale. Vanessa always came home at the same time. She would drive from work to school and pick up Emily from the after-school program. Together, they'd stop at the store for goodies. Then slowly, taking their time, they would take to their house. Mother and daughter shared the news of the day, discussed plans for the evening. It was wonderful. That was the time. That May evening. At first, it was business as usual. Emily was in a happy frame of mind. A long vacation, school camp, and a gift from her mother for the excellent completion of the first grade were ahead. The girl walked beside Vanessa and bounced with overflowing feelings. Vanessa smiled. She didn't even think of telling her daughter to have fun. And then a man approached them, handsome and young, his expensive branded clothes giving away his social status. He was looking directly at Vanessa and approaching her. There could be no doubt. Hello. A little confused by the young man's pronunciation. Don't be alarmed. I just don't know how to start a conversation. We need to talk. At least I do. I think it was getting. Emily looked at the stranger with curiosity, but without fear. The woman thought she was setting an example for her daughter. Not a good example. After all, so many times taught her not to talk to strangers and hear. But on the other hand, there was nothing to be afraid of. It's a busy street. Crowds of people going about their business. They're certainly not in any danger here. And this stranger evokes feelings other than fear or dislike. He's clearly embarrassed, though usually he's probably confident and self-sufficient. This behavior looks nice enough, and in general, an open look, a beautiful smile, a calm voice. Vanessa suddenly realized she was drawn to the end of it all. This is the kind of man you want to listen to. Maybe we should go to a cafe, the man suggested. I think the girl won't say no to ice cream. I won't refuse. Emily smiled at him. No, it's unnecessary, shook her head Vanessa. Realizing that the man did not know how to speak in front of a child of women, sent Emily to the nearest playground. Vanessa could see perfectly well what the daughter was doing. The girl was also peering at her mother, but she couldn't hear her conversation with the stranger now. So what did you want to talk about? The young man introduced himself as Andrew and then told her what the matter was. As he told her, Vanessa was surprised, pleased, and tried to hide a happy smile. She felt like the heroine of a romantic comedy. It turns out that Andrew is no longer in this cafe, every evening after work, and the walls there are transparent from thick backstage glass. A man, understandably during dinner, stares out into the street. In his field of vision are people hurrying about their business in the evening, and then one day he saw Vanessa and her daughter. Easy gait, a kind look. You looked at your daughter with such tenderness and looked like the Madonna and Child from the ancient paintings. I don't know how to explain it. Andrew was embarrassed and confused. But Vanessa, of course, she understood what the man was trying to say. Don't think anything of the sort. It's just that, as I understand it, you're single now, unmarried, and we can try, well, to meet, to go for a walk somewhere to socialize. I'm raising my daughter alone, that's true. But how did you figure that out? I just assumed. Andrew smiled broadly. It was obvious that Vanessa's admission that she was single pleased him very much. No ring on her finger. Besides, I've never seen you with anyone. Just you and your daughter. I've been watching you for a long time. That may sound frightening, but don't think I won't, the man assured Vanessa. Her heart fluttered joyfully and goosebumps ran up and down her back. The woman tried very hard not to show her feelings and hoped she was succeeding. You already know here, Emily and I pass by at this time every day. No wonder you see us all the time. Andrew smiled again. Yes, you're right. That's exactly how it worked out. When I see you, it makes me feel so happy, so warm. Well, now that I've said it out loud, that's why I decided to talk to mine. I think you're a wonderful person. Not many people like you. And of course, you're very beautiful. Vanessa couldn't help smiling. It had been so long since she had been complimented. It had been so long since she had felt herself admirable and loved. It was incredibly gratifying. Then the conversation flowed, somehow more naturally. Unnoticeably, Vanessa and Andrew switched to you. The man was no longer embarrassed or lost. He told a little about himself and asked Vanessa a few questions about his life. The bonding happened naturally and easily. A little later, Emily, who was playing on the playground, joined them on the bench. She diffused the situation even more with her childlike directness. As it happened, Emily and Andrew immediately found a common language. And then there were meetings, dates, sometimes with Emily, sometimes without her. Vanessa was afraid to believe that she had finally met her man. Andrew understood her, accepted and respected her opinion, and was always ready to offer help. Vanessa felt that if she turned to him with any problem, and he would solve it immediately and with the joy of being able to help. Of course, there were doubts. The story of Mark was still fresh in her mind. Though it had been many years since then, Andrew is younger. He holds a high position in a large company. His parents are very wealthy after all. Do they need a daughter-in-law like that? And Andrew himself. The man is rich, handsome, virtually flawless. He must have a lot of admirers around him, and the man wasn't exactly hiding it. Of course, I've met many women, but you're different from all of them. You're the best, sincere and honest, a little naive and gentle. There's probably no one like you anymore. I was lucky to meet you by chance. From these words, she already loved Andrew with all her heart and felt that he had no less strong feelings for her. But Vanessa still could not believe that a long and serious relationship between them was possible. People around them were adding fuel to the fire, especially Jenna Master. Disappointment with men. Those rich ones, they're always looking for someone. I've had stories like that. James, for instance. Do you remember him? Probably a businessman with a cool car. He sang in your ear, "I love him, I can't do it." Caught him, dumped him. married his father's partner's daughter. The usual story. Don't get your hopes up either. It can be painful. But things didn't work out the way Jenna had predicted. Andrew made some sort of proposal. He looked into her eyes with such concern as she was confused with surprise. What to say? Andrew then thought Vanessa was formulating a polite refusal. He himself had admitted it to her later. But the woman, she just didn't know what to do because she was confused and because she had the attitude firmly planted in her head. They're not a couple. I love you very much, Vanessa finally said. But you won't regret it later. I mean, we're not exactly equals. And I have a daughter, Do you really think so? Andrew marveled, and then he held Vanessa tightly to him. I love you. I don't need anyone else. I am happy that I noticed you once. It's the greatest gift of fate. Vanessa was bursting then with joy and surprise at the touching essence of the situation itself. It was nice to feel so valued and loved. Well, your parents won't mind. Only now I realized my omission, Andrew smiled. I should have introduced you to them a long time ago. Then such questions would not have arisen in principle. Andrew's parents turned out to be incredibly nice and smiling people. They welcomed Vanessa and Emily so warmly that the woman had no doubts. Andrew was not lying. He really wants to be her spouse. They're going to be fine. Children are a great happiness. Anna smiled. Andrew's mom looked at Emily fondly. She is so beautiful. You have a very good girl. Emily was reciprocating Andrew's father and mother with affection. If Vanessa was at first shy in the company of her mother-in-law, her 7-year-old daughter immediately found a common language with them. She needed her grandparents so much. Anna and Sam had long dreamed of grandchildren. And then there was the wedding. Not a lavish celebration with a lot of guests, but a small family holiday. It was what both the bride and groom wanted. After the newfound family, Vanessa, Andrew, and Emily flew to the warm sea. It was a wonderful joint vacation full of sun, fun, pleasant surprises. And then family life began in Andrew's big apartment. The life has quickly settled down. Everything went in its own way. After only a couple of months, it seemed that it was always like that. 2 years after the wedding, the family was enriched with 2 new members. Vanessa gave birth to twins. Frank and Peter were so funny, so cute. They quickly became everyone's favorites. Anna, Vanessa's mother-in-law, loved taking care of the babies. The happy grandmother came to the apartment of the young family almost every day to help her daughter-in-law. 2 babies at once. It's no joke. She was often accompanied by Sam's husband. That too did not dote on the children and constantly invented some fun games. When Grandpa came to visit, there was always squealing and laughter in the apartment. Vanessa enjoyed these visits. Andrew turned out to be not only a wonderful husband, but also a caring father. And the man made no distinction between Emily and his sons. He paid equal attention to all of them. Time passed, the boys grew up and went to kindergarten. Vanessa was finally able to return to work. Of course, there was no need for money as before. But the woman loved what she was doing. Besides, she liked the team and socializing. She did not want to become a housewife at all, although Andrew had suggested it many times. Vanessa explained her decision to her husband, and he, as always, understood her. She and Andrew have been together for 6 years now, and these years have changed Vanessa a lot. She became more calm, more feminine, more peaceful. How could it be otherwise when you're with a man you never even dreamed of? He's so unbelievably good at everything. But now Vanessa suddenly runs through the streets of the city after her ideal husband, who apparently is in a hurry to meet his mistress. The woman did not believe Jenna's words when she said that she had seen Andrew several times in a cafe with a spectacular lady. Vanessa felt sorry for her friend. She so desperately wanted what she herself had for a husband. Children, a strong family. Vanessa knew that Jenna was a little jealous of her and thought her words about Andrew were either fiction or a mistake. But here he was, Andrew, strangely dressed, unshaven, very tired, going on and on when he should be at home with the baby. Here, at last, is the restaurant. The man walked in there, didn't wait for a while so he wouldn't run into his husband at the door. Then he slipped into the establishment as well. The woman chose the far corner, a table bookmarked with a palm tree. You can hardly see her there. It's a cozy vantage point. But Andrew, Vanessa's husband, was seated at a table against the opposite wall, far enough away to hear his conversation, but well enough to observe. And yes, Andrew was not alone at the table. He was already being waited on by her, the same blonde to whom Jenna had spoken. She wasn't wrong, it turns out. Indeed. The girl is quite attractive and looks at the man so attentively, so enthusiastically tells him something. And Andrew answered with a one-word look at the interlocutor, nodding with interest in time with her words. His eyes remained very anxious. Probably he was reporting to his mistress how his life with his wife and 3 children was late for him. Maybe even complaining that he had to carry someone else's child. All the complexes and stereotypes are not once tortured. Suddenly, again stirred up, raised their heads, and desperately jealous Andrew to this talkative beauty, and also hurt that those around him, including Jenna, were right. Never a man like Andrew would be happy with a woman like her Vanessa. He'd need someone brighter, more presentable like this blonde. Andrew suddenly hung his head, as if hearing something sad or frightening. The blonde put a hand on his shoulder gently and soothingly and gestured. The man covered her palm with his. They smiled at each other. Her eyes darkened at this point from her overflowing emotions. If it had been possible to write off this conversation as a business conversation before, it was definitely not. Andrew suddenly rose from his seat and moved toward the smoking room. That seemed strange too. Andrew, after all, never smoked and generally adhered to a healthy lifestyle. Nothing had escaped his spouse. Now she'll talk to him, ask him about the blonde. Vanessa doesn't intend to wait for tonight. And in such a situation, the man is confused, will not be able to come up with an excuse or lie to the effect of surprise. When he saw Vanessa, Andrew glanced at her indifferently at first. Something was wrong with him. Something subtly unfamiliar slid into the features of the man he loved. Was he so changed by the company of his mistress? And how could he remain so calm when he saw his wife at this very moment? Vanessa to the railing, into the man's angry gaze. Andrew raised his eyebrows in surprise, gazing into her face, and suddenly there seemed to be a flicker of understanding in his eyes. It was as if he remembered Vanessa and recognized her at last. The situation was becoming more and more incomprehensible. Andrew, can you explain to me what is going on here? Vanessa herself did not expect her voice to shake from the tears coming to her eyes. You must be Vanessa. Andrew smiled embarrassedly, or the woman, only now noticing the old deep scar on this man's temple and the tattoo on his arm. The man also seemed to be thinner than Andrew. Who are you? Vanessa breathed out. She shook. She grabbed the ledge of the wall to keep from falling. The man immediately and carefully supported her. His movements, his facial expressions, his facial features. Everything was exactly like Andrew's, and yet it wasn't him. Now that Vanessa was right next to him, she could see it clearly. It was probably for the best. It's probably for the best, the man smiled. I didn't know how to tell you about myself, even though I've been looking for you for almost a month. How? I've been living in your town all this time. Nina and I. She's a private investigator, by the way. She's the one who helped me with this search. She and I have been gathering evidence and proof. There's no doubt now. Now comes the hard part. Familiarity. I don't get it. It's not surprising. The story is so unique in its own way. Any indie movie could top it. I thought you were my husband. It's understandable. Andrew and I are natural copies of each other, twin clones. My husband is the only child in the family. Vanessa weakly objected. If Anna and Sam had other children, they would have told us about it. Vanessa knew it had taken the older couple a long time to become parents. Andrew is a very late and long-awaited child, and he was born alone. I suggest we go to the table. Victoria and I will tell you all about it there. I nodded weakly. The blonde flicked her eyebrows down in surprise at seeing Vanessa. But Nina apparently recognized her. At least, she immediately addressed Vanessa by name. This is a really incredible story, Nina said. It will change your spouse's life and yours, of course. It was Nina who began the story. A man who looked uncannily like Andrew, whose name, as it turned out, was James. Every now and then he'd insert his lines, add to it, correct it. In distant New York lived a large family of mom, dad, and 4 children. Neither education nor parental support the couple had. All their property was a 2-room apartment in a dilapidated 2-story barracks on the edge of town. It was a wooden structure, shriveled by time, an emergency dwelling. But the large family had no other home in sight. There was a catastrophic lack of money. The head of the family worked part-time where he could. Who is to garden about the flight? Who will help to re-roof? Somewhere he unloaded a truck at the store, in a word, a handyman. In the morning he would go out in search of a living. And in the evening he often came back drunk, but without money. The mother of the family hardly worked. She had no time to be pregnant or with another baby on her hands. Is it a joke? For 6 years of life together, the couple managed to produce 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. It would seem quite enough, given the initial conditions. Too much even. But the mother of many children had a different opinion. First of all, the children were paid an allowance. Secondly, having a baby in her arms, she could legally not work. Her husband all dreamed that when the younger wife will grow up to help him in making money for the family. But his other half had other plans. And in general, the woman loved children, especially when they are very small, touching, visiting as kittens, who glasses that smell so nice. Well, how to refuse herself this pleasure? In general, contrary to the aspirations of the head of the family, got pregnant his fella in the 5th time to trick around his finger on something safe days. Women can when they want. The spouse came to despair when he learned that he would soon become a father again. Pulling another one was too much. And then there were suspicions that there was more than one child under his wife's heart. That is suspiciously fast-growing belly this time. The mother of many children did not go to the ultrasound. There was no money, and she didn't register early, only to fray nerves in vain to go to the counseling center. No, she was an experienced lady. She knew that the most convenient way to surrender to doctors is on the eve of childbirth. But experienced acquaintances unanimously assured twins. The old lady on the 1st floor was a former midwife. It was 2 heads in the belly of the pregnant woman felt twins. I'm telling you exactly, authoritatively declared the neighbor. I am never wrong. The woman smiled happily, and her husband grabbed his head. There are twins here too. At that time, the father of many children found a good part-time job, tending the bushes in the house of a wealthy businessman Chuck. Every dog in town knew him. He owned a chain of restaurants and cafes. The man was lucky enough to get a seasonal job with him. Paid well, no hard feelings. The work was not dusty simple. And what a magnificent house. And the garden was a pleasure to work in. People live, but she didn't look happy to be rich. And the new gardener quickly found out why. Turns out, the couple couldn't become parents, couldn't make it work, and there were some problems with the wife's health. The father of many children chuckled to himself. His husband would have such problems. Businessman this where only his wife did not take his wife, where she only did not treat. And no good. And this, it turns out, happens. One day the wife of the owner could not stand it and burst into tears right in the garden. Chuck clumsily consoled her, tried to find words. That's when the father of many children and the idea arose in his head. He waited until Chuck was alone and approached him with a proposal. You're having a baby. It's not working out. I got 4 on the bench. I got twins on the way. What are we going to do with them? We can't afford them. So maybe we'll give you the kids at a fair price. My wife's not registered with the doctors, so the babies don't even exist on paper. What do you think? Chuck was outraged at first, yelled at the gardener. But a couple days later, he called him in for a serious talk. It turned out that the businessman discussed the proposal with his wife, and she happily jumped at the chance to become a mother of newborn twins. That evening, the head of the family returned to his home barn in high spirits. He would make such a bargain and get rid of unwanted children and earn money. Besides, at least one of his descendants would have a human life. The man was even a little jealous of the unborn twins. Lucky kids. But his wife suddenly resisted giving the children away. They are my relatives. I feel them and I'm already waiting for them. I won't give my kids to anyone. Let them take them from the orphanage. Children in orphanages are alcoholics and sick people. They don't need them. We have babies. They're just beautiful. And then, what will these kids see in our place? And there's such a house, so much money. But the woman is stubborn. She wouldn't do it. Except her husband wasn't about to give up his plan. He told Chuck about the problem, saying that his wife did not want to part with the children. She was not even ready to give up one child. And then the businessman voiced a plan, which was under the power of only such an influential and rich man. At the due date of the young woman, in the local maternity hospital, 2 boys were born. The mother was a little surprised. There was something special about her. In the past, no one ran around like this in front of her. And here's so much attention, so much care. I guess it's because she's having twins. The babies are weak, anxiously, shook her head, the doctor. We need to get them to the NICU. Don't worry, the midwife reassured her. It's twins. With twins is always so. Everything will be fine. But the midwife was wrong. In the morning, the mothers of many children brought only one son to feed. The second. He hadn't survived the night, she was told. In fact, the baby was handed over to the Chuck family. This was the plan that Sam had proposed to the father of many children. That same night, Anna also arrived at the maternity hospital. Allegedly, she was going into labor. No one was to guess that the baby wasn't hers. They were discharged on the same day. The woman from the back barn and Chuck's wife. One was greeted by her husband and older children happy with the successful outcome of the event. The other had a grand discharge with music, balloons, guest photographers. Only a very limited circle of people knew about the fact that the babies these women were holding in their arms were twin brothers. And they kept quiet, because each of these people received a tidy sum and warnings. That's how it turned out. Nina finished the story. Andrew, by fate, fell into Chuck's family. James stayed with his blood relatives. Not for long, though. After a couple of years, all the children were removed from the family by the child welfare authorities. At that point, James was already an older brother. There was another girl born after him. So I grew up in an orphanage, James continued. I wouldn't say that my childhood was very hard. We had a nice, quiet life. Raised. We were educated. I graduated from the College of Mathematics and Computer Science. Now I work as a programmer. I have a family in the capital. A wife, 2 kids, an apartment. Everything is as it should be. Vanessa flapped her eyes, looking at James. That's the story. Really, it was like a fairy tale. How would Andrew feel about it? Good thing she'd found out. First, to prepare a spouse. It'll be a real shock to him. And the mother-in-law. They're old people. They need to be told too. A little more gently. Vanessa couldn't quite figure out how to feel about Andrew's parents' behavior. On the one hand, it was immoral and illegal. On the other hand, her husband was living in royal conditions, not wandering around in orphanages, and the childless couple was happy that they finally had a child. My mother visited me at the orphanage, James continued sometimes. I guess it was true that she loved children, she just wasn't a very responsible parent. She brought me cheap caramels, stroked my head. We didn't starve in the orphanage, of course. But I waited for these visits and caramels like manna from heaven, because it is important for every child to know that he is loved. And then I became an adult and independent. I didn't quit either. I helped her a little with money and tried to treat her. She drank heavily. Her father died a long time ago when she was young and her mother was stronger. But James couldn't perform a miracle to change his mother. All he could do was support her and watch her. As she sank, she lost her humanity. One day, the woman became seriously ill. Her liver started to fail. Not surprisingly, James visited her in the hospital, bought the necessary drugs, but the doctors did not give a single chance. It was a matter of days. The old woman realized this, and one day she told her son, the only one of her children who did not leave her this story about twins, a rich family of a child from this wealthy, childless couple. The husband once still revealed the truth to his wife after another feast explained where he suddenly got a large amount of money. More than 20 years had passed since that moment, so the woman was not particularly impressed, but she remembered, of course, her husband's story. She was even happy for her son, who now lives like a prince and knows no need. She praised her spouse for such a decision. The mother wanted to find Chuck's family just to have a look at the second twin. But the businessman and his family, almost as soon as they got the baby in their arms, they went elsewhere. Chuck sold his business, his house, his possessions, and just kind of disappeared. As I found out, later he started a new life in a distant city, bought a completely different business, settled in a new place. I mean, right here. It's just incredible. Vanessa was experiencing a mixture of all kinds of feelings: surprise, joy, anxiety, and relief. Relief that Andrew was faithful to her. She'd been imagining things, but what shock was in store for the whole family? Andrew? I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear the twins' news. He's dreamed of having a brother since he was a little boy. It's the one wish his parents never got to fulfill. That's what I said when I heard my mother's story. She was gone the next day, by the way. If she had kept quiet then, she would have taken the secret with her. As it was, I now knew I had a twin brother and intended to find him at all costs with other siblings. I kept in touch all the time. They are all decent, people grown and educated, with families. And the twin brother, your exact replica, your natural clone, is a different story. James hired a private investigator. She got to work and very quickly got on Chuck's trail. It wasn't hard. The girls smiled. They moved away from Andrew's blood family, of course, but they didn't try very hard to cover their tracks. I found them quickly, and so we've been here for a month now. James smiled, looking around and gathering the latest evidence that this wasn't a mistake. Although the main evidence here is Andrew's success, we're practically identical. Even you and your spouse didn't realize what was going on right away. The final proof is ready. There's no mistake. The next step is introducing the brothers. That's the step James is hesitant to take. 9 aside. And all of a sudden it just happened all by itself. Well, Vanessa smiled. So we'll all have a celebratory dinner tonight. I'll be home at 7. I need time to get Andrew ready, so come by at 8 o'clock. You know the address, of course. I'm sure you do. James Schoen.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Happy graduates came on the stage. They were given certificates. Girls were given flowers and boys were given small gifts. Dear graduates, Clara, smiling ingratiatingly, took under her arm a handsome 40-year-old man in a dark, expensive suit who entered the hall. Tonight would not be possible without our dear sponsor, Christian Wilson. Let's welcome him. Flowers and gifts for our graduates, provided by his firm. She was the first to applaud, led him to a place of honor among the guests, and sat down next to him. Pay attention to that girl over there. Nodded the director of the orphanage to the stage. Pretty, relaxed, the pride of our orphanage, a pleasant conversationalist can do a lot. Take a closer look. Not bad, quietly replied Wilson, appraising, looking at the graduate. But it's not the same. I'm tired of pretty faces in their 18, already gone through fire and water. I want a clean girl, not spoiled. She should be rustic, knave, but smart. I asked for a modest, simple girl, preferably pretty. Isabella Davis is invited to the stage. The hostess has announced. Who's that? Squinting, the man asked, scrutinizing the girl, who, smiling embarrassedly, approached the host. How come I've never seen her before? Well, Clara hesitated. She's so unassuming you wouldn't even look at her if it weren't for graduation. She's pretty sure, but she's very modest. She's a headache. Believe me, she can't do anything. She's hardly interesting to you as a woman. Clara got nervous. Trouble is, I thought she wouldn't notice Isabella. I had dressed her in a low-colored outfit, but the devil had noticed. The headmistress was upset because of the pupil. She loved her maternally and did not want the fate that was prepared by the dear guest. I'll decide who I'm interested in and who I'm not, Wilson cut her off abruptly. Just such a type, the limit of my dreams. Did you hide her on purpose? He looked suspiciously at the director. Don't disappoint me. You know I don't tolerate games behind my back. I thought that little gray mouse couldn't be the centerpiece of your house. How can she be dignified at social gatherings? She'll embarrass you. Believe me, she'll bring you grief. Meanwhile, the festivities are over. Christian, Clara have secluded themselves in the principal's office. I'm taking Isabella away from you. In an expensive leather armchair, the man said. I liked her right away. Listen. Clara frantically searched for a reason to refuse. She's just a girl, naive, unintelligent, but what if I sent Lisa with you? She's a quick-witted, skillful girl. I think she's closer to you than Isabella. I'm afraid she'll disappoint you. Clara was not in vain nervous. Her guest was a lover of young girls who had just finished school. The woman realized that, despite the unruly, cocky character, Isabella will not be able to fight back. Don't be so shaky. Christian grinned. Your son is safe as long as you honor our arrangements. Yes, I'll do as you say. I'm glad we understand each other. The man smiled sweetly and threw some bills on the table. This is for you to ease your conscience. I didn't realize you were so sentimental. If you care so much about this Isabella, it means I didn't make the wrong choice. He left, and Clara sat down at the table, dropped her head on her hands, and fell silent. What a scoundrel! What a lecher! She muttered to herself. I am good. I could not defend the girl. My heart is not in place. I am so worried about Isabella. But what can I do? 2 dear people are at stake, and yet my son's freedom is more precious. The way things are, I can't let my child go to prison. And Isabella. God forgive me, I'm a sinner. In the morning, Clara went to the dining room where the inmates were having breakfast. Isabella, come here, please. Yes, Clara. Trustingly, looking into the eyes of the director, the girl replied. The woman looked away, uncomfortable with the upcoming conversation, but Wilson cornered her. And what are those people in strict suits doing here? Who are they waiting for? Isabella asked, entering the principal's office. Isabella. The woman paused. There was a struggle going on inside her, but she knew that the mother would win and the principal would fulfill the wish of the man who sponsored all the big events at the orphanage. I'm very happy that you graduated from high school. You are the pride of this year's graduating class. I know you have big plans for your future, but you will have to put them on hold. Why? The girl looked at the principal, puzzled. Wilson is waiting for you at his house. Wilson? Our guest from yesterday? Clara nodded. She was visibly nervous. Why does he need me? I don't understand. What don't you understand? The headmaster suddenly shouted in a trembling voice. Didn't you hear anything about him from our girls' graduates? He liked you. I've heard something in passing. Isabella slowly began to realize what had been said. But I don't like him. I don't want to go out with him. One of the girls wanted to go to his house. I don't remember. Let them go in my place. I don't want to be his concubine. You can't refuse. Tiredly said Clara. He won't give up. If anything, he's made up his mind. I'm not going to go to him. You have no right to force me. The girl rushed to the door, swung it open. The exit was blocked by stout young men. They stared silently at Isabella, ready to twist her at any moment if necessary. She slammed the door shut and turned to the principal. How can you do this to us? I mean, he's old. Have you sold out for money? You don't understand anything. Clara, nervously biting her lips, wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to keep warm. He's a scary man and I'm I'm on the hook for him. A few years ago, he saved my son, got him out of jail, my boy's freedom. That's the trump card Wilson is using, and I'm powerless. I can't fight back. He's blackmailing me. One day you'll be a mother, and you'll realize you'd sell yourself to the bald man for your child to be happy. So there's no chance of me getting out of here. Those are his guards at the door. I wanted to spare you from that fate, but he wanted someone just like you. He said he wanted a naive, modest girl, and God gave you beauty and intelligence to ruin. How many girls did he have in his collection? You're the fourth. And where did they go? Do you know what happened to them after they were in the hands of this Wilson? I don't know anything about their fate. Clara looked pityingly at Isabella. I haven't tried to find out. So you send 18-year-old girls to a grown man and just forget about their fate. How's that? Doesn't it make you feel bad? I'm sorry. Tears came to the woman's eyes. They agreed at once. No one resisted. She grasped Isabella's hand and spoke eagerly. If I could stop him, but my son's freedom is in his hands. You will understand me when you are a mother yourself. You'd better accept it. He won't back down. He's a scary man. He'll stop at nothing. Even if I tried to report him to the police, he'd get away with it. It's all been bought. Isabella stood for a moment, looking into the headmaster's eyes. In them, except fear and entreaty, she read nothing else, then pulled her hand out of the hands of Claire, abruptly opened the door and said loudly, "Well, if there's no escaping fate, let's take it as it comes. Let's go, boys." Isabella was returning from school, not far from the house, noticed her grandmother, caught up with her mother, who leaned with her back against the fence, sat looking at the surrounding with meaningless eyes. The girl slowed her step and stopped. Well, stood up like a stumbling block. Vanessa shouted, "Help your mother to the bed. I can't do it alone. You see, she's drunk again." Lord, when will it all end? Make sense of my foolish daughter. When will you get drunk on this vodka? Isabella obediently came and took her mother under her arm, but she couldn't hold her and dropped her on the ground. "Oh, you bastard!" Grandmother hit her, dry fist in the shoulder. Quite sensitively, the girl wrinkled from the pain. "You can't hold your mother. Hold her tight." The two of them dragged the mother to the bed. You didn't watch her again. The old woman scolded her granddaughter. "I told you not to let her out of the house." "I was at school. How could I watch her?" Justified the girl. "We left the house together in the morning. She said she went to work." "What kind of job?" "She was fired last week. What am I going to do with them?" The old woman cried. "Both of them and their husbands drink like crazy, and you can't help them." "Did you go for bread?" "No, I didn't have time. I'll be right back." Isabella ran out of the house, afraid she'd get another beating from her grandmother. "Isabella," a neighbor met her. "There's your father lying by the store. You should pick him up." The girl hurried to the store. Her father was lying on the side, sleeping soundly. "Daddy." Isabella shook him by the shoulder. "You won't wake him up." Some man said confidently, "And how can I bring him home?" The girl was confused. "Don't be sad. We'll help you." The man bent down, pulled her father by the arm and put him on the ground, then picked him up, threw him on his shoulder and dragged him. Isabella ran after him. "Receive." Entering the house and breathing heavily, the stranger spoke. He carefully lowered his heavy burden onto the couch, straightened up, took a breath, and left. "Where did you find him?" Vanessa asked, making her father comfortable on the couch. "Outside the store. He was asleep. The man volunteered to help. I didn't even ask." The world is not without kind people. "Did you buy bread?" The old woman caught on. No, I had to come back because of my father. You wretch! The grandmother swung and pulled on her granddaughter's back with the towel she held in her hands. Isabella quickly rushed into the store. What are you going to kill Isabella for? A neighbor showed up on the doorstep. You're out of control, Granny grumbled. No wonder, parents who do not dry out for a day. The child is not needed at all. Somehow she's still studying well. Another girl in her place would have abandoned everything long ago. Yes, it's a pity about the girl, the neighbor lamented. You should caress her. The girl lacks love and affection. One day she won't be able to stand it and will do something. That's why we have to keep a tight grip on her, so that she grows up strictly, or else she'll go down a crooked path like her parents. Wash the floors, she told her granddaughter when she returned from the store. You've trampled here. I have no strength left. Okay, Grandma. The girl obediently took a bucket and a rag. You're driving the girl crazy. The neighbor reproached the grandmother. She doesn't hear a kind word from you. Is it her fault that both parents have gone crazy? None of your business. The old woman replied glumly. I can't cope alone, and parents are of little use. You should take pity on her. The friend lamented. But what is the use of that pity? Then she will thank me for teaching her everything. The mother should be an example, but not fate. Both of them should be deprived of parental rights. I don't think so. It's better to live at home with them than in an orphanage. The neighbor shook her head disapprovingly and went away. Grandma, can Cindy come to my birthday party? Isabella asked one day. She was going to be 13 in 2 days. Think about it. Where are you going to invite guests? Grandma frowned. Parents won't let them stay. They just want an excuse to get drunk. Then you'll be embarrassed. We'll lock ourselves in my room. No one will hear us. Please, Grandma. All right, Vanessa muttered. Just don't tell your parents. Maybe you'll get away with it. I'll make you something tasty. The grandmother hoped in vain that the mother would not remember about her daughter. She came in the evening with a bottle of wine. Set the table. She ordered her mother, shaking her hand, pouring vodka into a glass. Would you not spoil the party, Isabella? Asked the older woman. She has a guest. I have the right to drink to my daughter's health, and you are not my order. I gave birth to her. That's a good reason to have another drink. I drink with my own money. I'm not borrowing it from you. Can I have an appetizer? You'd better replace the electric stove. The wire's getting hot. It's not a bad thing. You're always dissatisfied with something. Angrily said the woman. You need, you buy, but I have no money. When I get a job, then everything will be. But until then, do not bother me. You and your husband will always have money for vodka. Vanessa grumbled, serving a simple appetizer. Isabella and her friend sat in the room for a while, watched cartoons, played, and went home. The girl was glad that her mother did not make a scandal like last year when Isabella invited her friends, and in no way expected that her mother would come home drunk from work and roughly disperse the whole company. The girl at that moment was ready to fall to the ground with shame. In the morning, she kissed her grandmother and ran off to school. Do not delay. I'm boiling borscht with your favorite garlic buns. The old woman shouted after her. Okay, Grandma. The day was going great. Isabella was in a hurry to get home. She was walking, facing the spring sunshine, and humming a cheerful song to herself. Wow! Approaching the house, suddenly noticed Isabella. An uneasiness stirred in her soul. Was there a fire? There were people in the street, cars, ambulances, firemen. Do you know who has a fire? She asked a woman who was trying to see what was going on up ahead. Isabella. The neighbor looked at her fearfully. "Your house is on fire." "How?" The girl was dumbfounded and rushed through the crowd. "Where?" Someone called her and tried to hold her back. Don't go to the ashes, stop. Let me go, my mom's there." They grabbed her, held her down. She started to break free. "Grandma, Daddy, let me go. Why are you standing there?" "We have to save her." She screamed, trying to break free from the tight embrace. "I have to go to them." "Isabella, they're dead." A man's strong arms shook her. "You can't go in there, do you hear me?" "They're gone." "Yes, they are. Why are you standing there? Why aren't you helping?" "They can't be dead." "Don't you understand? They're out there. I'll find them." "Let me go, please." The girl suddenly weakened, slipped out of my arms, sat down on the grass and wept. She raised her head to the sky. "Mommy." The soul-crushing scream rose above the flames and vanished into the sky. Everyone standing around her was heartbroken by the cry. Women wiped their tears with handkerchiefs, men gritted their teeth and looked sympathetically at the little girl's grief. People were quietly talking among themselves, watching the fire being doused. Suddenly it flared up, and I looked, and it was going up in flames. No one escaped. The firemen came quickly, but there was nothing they could do. They flooded to keep the flames from spreading to other buildings. Do we know what caused it? The cops said it was faulty wiring. Vanessa complained that the electric stove was sparking, but who'd listen to her? All dead. Good thing the girl was at school, or she would have been too. Why did the ambulance come? They thought they could save someone, but there. What a grief! I feel sorry for Isabella. Now she'll go to an orphanage. The girl sat in the grass and stared blankly at the house, tears running down her cheeks. She could not understand that she was left alone, without a home, without relatives. "Come on, sweetheart." Someone lifted her up. "There's no reason for you to sit here. Come and stay with us until the child welfare authorities get here. You must be hungry. Grandma promised me borscht." Swallowing tears, quietly said the girl, "Poor you, poor orphan, how unlucky you are." The neighbor shook her head. Isabella followed her obediently. Her strength to cry was gone, and there was a persistent smell of burning in her nose. She collapsed on the offered sofa, curled up in a ball under the blanket, and cried quietly. "No, I don't believe it. It can't be. Mom, Dad, and the always nagging Grandma. There is no one. How can I go on living?" "You cry, sweetheart." An old woman stroked her head. "You'll feel better. God willing, everything in life will get better." She sighed heavily. The girls were fidgeting in front of the mirror, trying on dresses for the graduation ceremony. The exams were finally behind them. Isabella looked dreamily at her reflection. "I thought they would never end. Now we are free. You see, no tutors, no scheduled breakfasts, no getting up, no going to bed, but life will begin. Isabella, you're so beautiful." The girlfriend did not take her admiring eyes off the girl. "You say so too." Isabella looked at herself in the mirror. "I can't believe we've known each other for only 5 years." "Yes," she laughed. "It seems like a lifetime." She ran over to Kelly and hugged her tightly. "You know, as strange as it sounds, I'm glad you ended up in our orphanage. I was always jealous. You're lucky to remember your parents." "Yeah, lucky. I just remember them, always drunk. I never even knew mine. Do you remember when we were friends?" "Of course I remember." And Isabella got sad. The ritual, the new girl's registration. Everyone was laughing, and I was on the floor with a broken nose. You were the only one who stood up for me. From that day on, no one ever tried to mess with you again. Of course, because you fought like a tiger. Isabella laughed. I'm sorry we have to break up. I'll miss you. But we'll correspond. We'll return phone calls. I'll definitely come visit as soon as I get settled, and you come too. You finally decided to go to modeling school. Haven't you changed your mind? Well, can you imagine what awaits you there? Yes, the girl dreamily spun around the room. It's not for nothing that I earned my portfolio. Tried to participate in all the events. I hope it'll help me get through the competition. Yeah, with your looks, you could be an actress, not just a model. Juliet would be amazing in your performance. In our amateur talent show, you're unrivaled. Don't exaggerate. Isabella was embarrassed by the flattery. We have a lot of talented kids here. Thanks to her, my literacy is invisible. She made me participate in all Olympiads and events. Lucky you, Isabella. You know what you want to get out of life? Well, Isabella hugged her friend. Why are you so sad? We'll be fine, and you'll find yourself. Shall we go to the auditorium? They're giving out diplomas now. They say Wilson has prepared such presents for us. I can't wait to see them. The girls went to the auditorium that were already in full swing handing out certificates. Look, whispered in my friend's ear. Wilson here at the age, and yet nothing like that. Attractive and in good shape, his peers have long since grown their bellies, and this one is watching himself, and still that walker, not a single beautiful woman will not miss. The girl laughed, and still not married. I'd like to see the one he will marry. Who is she, anyway? Isabella asked, looking at the tall, broad-shouldered man with the piercing look in his blue eyes. You're crazy. The girl was surprised. This is the local patron of the arts. Everything we have in the orphanage is his merit. He gave us a computer class last year. Look at him. He's very handsome. Many of our girls have a crush on him. Uh-huh, agreed Isabella. But it's old. What do they see in it? You don't know anything about men. At this age, they are at their best. And what does it matter how old he is? Hotly whispered in her ear friend. If he has money, chickens do not peck. Anybody with him, like behind a stone back, a dream, not a man. How do you know? Isabella looked at her friend suspiciously. We're waiting for Isabella Davis. The girlfriend suddenly heard. Go. Isabella pushed Isabella, the girl. It's your turn. Imagine you're on the runway. Show everyone what the first beauty of our orphanage should look like. Let them gasp at your attractiveness. The girl walked to the stage. Returning to her seat, she felt the stares on her. Wilson was looking at Isabella in a way that made her uncomfortable. Why is he looking at me so strangely? She thought, and shivered under the predatory gaze of his blue eyes. It's like he's undressing me. I wouldn't want to be alone with him. Huh? She restrained herself. I thought, why would he want me? But Isabella was not mistaken. Christian was staring at her with a greedy gaze. I must have her. The man thought, gazing at the girl. Very nice. He smiled, satisfied, anticipating a night in the arms of the young beauty. Isabella felt uncomfortable, in the company of 3 scowling, taciturn men. Where are we going? The girl could not bear the long silence, trying not to show how frightened she was. Christian's country house. The man was silent. If you behave well, the owner will not offend. He likes obedient young ladies. The men laughed. It depends on what he expects from me. The girl thought to herself. One thing is clear, there's no point in begging him to let me go, and I'm not going to snot. Rose-colored glasses also long ago removed. I understand, not tea drinking invited. The only thing left is to accept the situation as it is and then think how to get out of it. It's okay, I'll be able to stand up for myself. If you cannot escape from fate, you must take a chance, try to get out of poverty, so that no Wilson in the future no longer dare to drool at the sight of me and offer all sorts of abominations. I'm strong. I can handle this old man who likes young girls. I'll make him dance to my tune. I won't give up so easily. He doesn't expect to get me on a silver platter. Life in an orphanage had taught me a thing or two. And yet Isabella was scared, her heart clenched uneasily from the unknown. Here we are. The driver announced, stopping the car in the yard of a huge country house. Come. The guard opened the door in front of her. Christian is waiting. If you'll be good, you'll even like to be his guest. The man laughed, casting an expressive glance at her gorgeous body. Isabella entered the Wilson house and looked around in a hostess-like manner. Quite an environment, she thought. Plenty of room to spread out. Her courage was ostentatious. She tried not to think about what awaited her in the house. Isabella! Christian, opening his arms, went to meet his guest. I'm glad you agreed to accept my invitation. I'm honored. You may not believe me, but when I saw you on stage, I realized that this is the woman I have dreamed of all my life. You captured my heart from the very first minute. I promise you won't regret coming here. As I approached her, I grabbed her in his arms and began to cover her with passionate kisses. Christian. Isabella let him kiss her and then slipped out of his embrace. Is that any way to welcome a guest? Especially a woman. She smiled slyly, though her insides trembled with fear and loathing. The man stared at her, puzzled by the question. What do you mean? Where are the flowers, the champagne? I was imagining a romantic candle at dinner, and you immediately kiss. I didn't expect to take a complete stranger without foreplay. I'm told you're a skillful lover. We should get to know each other a little first, and save the best for later. I agree, the bouquet and confection period in our case is a little irrelevant, but still I wanted to prepare for the main event of the night. Yes, he mumbled something under his breath. I wasn't thinking. It's a very important day. I'm entering adulthood. You're my first man, and I'd like it to be beautiful. Why are you in such a hurry? I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. What are you doing? Eh? She playfully poked him in his slightly bulging belly with her finger. Did you want to save money on me? Or did you want to get me in bed right away? Is that really all you can offer me on a first date? She was on the edge of her seat, fear of the unknown forcing her to act brazenly. Isabella grabbed his tie, pulled him toward her. She didn't think that such an experienced lover would decide to dispense with the love game. The girl wrapped the tie around her fist. Christian blushed. It became hard for him to breathe. You witch, barely catching his breath, the man wheezed. This has never happened to me before. I like you, and I want you now. He suddenly grasped her slender wrists and yanked her sharply toward him. He forcefully put her on his lap and tried to kiss her, one hand holding her down, the other hand running under her blouse and squeezing her breasts. How hot you are, a delicate innocent flower. Let's go to the bedroom. I am overwhelmed with desire to possess you. Ah, you old lecher. Isabella shrieked and slapped him hard. What are you doing, bitch? Christian howled and grabbed his cheek. Taking advantage of the confusion, the girl jumped to her feet and ran a safe distance away from the excited man. She stopped by the hotly burning fireplace and grabbed a poker. Don't come near me. I'll defend myself. Don't expect to get away with this. Wilson hissed, rubbing his cheek, hot with fire. You seem to have forgotten where you are and why you're here. Don't make me angry. I can take you by force right now. Don't play with me or you'll regret it. I don't want to, she shouted, looking at him with a burning, feverish gleam in her eyes. How do you want it, my dear? He smirked. Rose petals in bed? Light music? Soft whispers and poetry reading until morning? I'm past that age. I prefer to spend my time making love. That goes without saying, but not now. The girl sat in the chair across from Christian. I propose a wager. A wager? Christian's eyes widened. Do you realize who you're offering this to? Isabella remembered a conversation with a friend who said that Wilson was a gambler. Yes, the girl declared defiantly. You're a gambler, but if you sleep with me, what's the interest? In a week at the most, you'll be satiated and kicked out of the house. Thank you if you'll pay for the first night in bed with a virgin. Naturally, I'll thank you. Insert man. No woman would accuse me of being stingy. Money, jewelry, I am a generous lover. That's understandable, but I suggest you entertain yourself in another way. Admit it. Do all your days resemble one another? Perhaps. Christian is wary. You boast that women never complain about you. I've heard that many try to get your attention and swear eternal love just for the money. You buy women, change them like gloves, and not one has ever said she loved you out of her heart and not for wealth. Yes, everyone's happy to be in your bed. I don't see where you're going with this, do you? Wilson frowned. He was beginning to be annoyed by this willful girl. But I'm not one of them, and you're not my type. That's not the kind of man I've seen around me. Isabella paused meaningfully. But if you manage to make me love you, I will become yours without any additional conditions. Do what you want with me then, and when I get bored, you can throw me out on the street. And the second condition? But if you yourself fell in love with me to unconsciousness, then I will still become yours, but only through the registration of marriage. You will make me your lawful wife, with all the consequences. Wilson laughed out loud. Do you know that I never lose? We'll see about that. The girl grinned. Don't hope that the problem is so easy to solve. But I still don't understand. What is the bet? You'll be mine either way. He accepted her game. She hooked him, and the excitement of the gambler flared up in him. He liked the girl more and more. That's true, but everything must be consensual, without coercion. Those are the only terms we'll agree to with you. Do you agree? To hell with you. Wilson waved his hand. But now I want to make love to you. I've already put this moment off for too long. I didn't bring you here for a heart-to-heart. He made an attempt to get closer to her. No. Isabella gestured for him to stop. Nothing can happen between us now. You yourself agreed to my proposal. For the rest of the bet, no bed. We agreed to make love consensually. Are you ready to sign off on your own loss? That doesn't sound like you. So now we're going to separate rooms and that's it? Of course. Isabella explained impatiently, like an unreasonable child. That's the point of our pact, to fall in love for real. And then either you get me or I get you. And at the end of the bet, we'll have a long married life. You won't lose anything at all. You'll only get me a little later. But you'll taste the victory when it's over. An unforgettable night in the arms of a virgin. What, Mr. Wilson, is it weak? Squinting, the girl asked. Not a bit. The man replied defiantly. How long do you suggest? 3 months. How? Enough time and your experience of seduction, young fools, to win my heart? Or have you already lost your youthful vigor? That you can't do anything but skim off the cream by sleeping with an innocent girl. And I thought I was an alpha male, a heroic lover. But in reality, alas, a banal suitor, unable to give pleasure to a woman. haven't hit a nerve. The man was sure of his victory. Wait, you'll still be at my feet, lying at my feet, begging for love and tenderness. He thought, you'll be begging me not to leave you. Well, the offer is tempting. Christian said slowly, my life has lacked spice. The reward for the tedious 3-month wait will be an unforgettable night with you. Without doubting my success, the more I really won't lose anything. Just 3 months and you're mine. So, do we have a deal? Isabella held out her hand to the man. Deal. He shook it with his strong hand. And you yourself will be able to endure 3 months? The girl was silent. You won't. Isabella grinned to herself. I'll never love you, and I'll never be your lover. I'm not likely to win over a man so adept at lovemaking. I just need to buy time, and then I'll decide what to do next. Little fool, you don't know I've never lost a game in my life. Wilson thought, looking at the girl with eyes darkened with passion. With what pleasure he would now undress her and show her what he could do. But he decided to see what would come of the bet. And you agreed to her terms? Laughed at him Buddy when Christian, over a shot of cognac, a few days later told him about the pair. Yes, I agreed to endure these months. It's worth it. You don't realize how seductive she is, and you hope she'll fall in love with you. I do. Arrogant, Wilson declared. You know I'm an expert in female psychology. In a month at the most, she will surrender to the mercy of the winner, and I will triumph, having gained power over this little girl who thinks herself a seductress of men's hearts. In fact, I'll be her first man. Christian? His friend looked at him suspiciously. Have you fallen in love with your prisoner? Even if I do, the man said evasively, the reward will not be long in coming. She's still mine. And you're ready to take her to register the marriage? That would be fun. Wilson laughed, but I haven't decided whether I'm ready to give up my freedom for another pretty face. Although I must say she is clever. Isabella, however, has hit a nerve, Christian. Hoping to knock her down with the romance of a summer evening, he decided to organize a fancy dinner on his yacht. She wouldn't be able to resist. He told the captain, no matter how hard she tries to play hard to get, she will not be able to remain indifferent to a ride on a luxury boat. I'm sure. The captain smiled understandingly. She will reciprocate. No frills, he ordered the chef. A girl from the orphanage will feel uncomfortable. Champagne, appetizers, fruit, dessert. I got it, Christian. Anything else? Captain, have the deck decorated with balloons and musicians. I want some light music. We'll walk along the coast. The girl will love it. I got it. Captain trumped. Should we count on a night? No. For 3 to 4 hours, I think for the first time is enough, she will dance with joy. The man grinned. What has she seen in her orphanage? Let her see how rich people live. I hope she'll appreciate my impulse. No one has ever been indifferent to an evening spent on a yacht. I think she'll be no exception. The night before the party, Wilson checked everything, made sure his orders were followed exactly. Isabella, I want to invite you to dinner. The man expected that the girl would be interested in his proposal, but she looked at him indifferently and said, But I do not understand you. Rich, ready to spend money left and right. Don't know where to put it? Give it to charity. Why go out when I've made a nice dinner at home? I'm a pretty good cook, don't you think? It's not just any dinner. Barely containing his irritation, Christian said, I'm taking you for a walk along the river. Yes. Isabella couldn't hide her interest. But then that changes everything. She jumped to her feet. I'm ready. You're going to go in that. The man was surprised, looking at her worn jeans and stretched t-shirt. Why, it's not like we're going to a restaurant. Pretending to be a fool, the girl replied, and then she laughed. Relax, Christian. Give me half an hour and I'll clean myself up. You didn't take my words seriously, did you? We were not taught to behave like this in society, but I know the elementary rules of etiquette. When Isabella emerged from the room, Wilson gasped. Before him stood a gorgeous woman in a dark dress, just above the knees. Her breasts were adorned with a simple gold chain and pendant, and her thick mane of dark brown hair fell loosely around her shoulders. Light makeup made expressive, lively, green eyes. Slender legs in low-heeled shoes were striking. Christian swallowed nervously, imagining how he would caress those beautiful legs. I'm shocked. It was all he could say, wondering what kind of underwear she was wearing now. Are we going? Looking at him haughtily, the girl asked. Yes, please. The man ushered her into the car. The ship swayed impatiently on the waves. Waiting for the guests, the captain met them on deck, helped them to board gallantly, bowed his head at the sight of the girl. Good evening, he greeted. Glad to see you aboard the Aurora. Isabella, would you care for a glass of champagne? Wilson asked, waving his hand to the waiter. It will add a little romantic flavor to our evening, and also, he waved again, I love music. Do you mind? In the dim light of the lanterns, 3 musicians appeared, playing a quiet, slow song. Do you like it? The man asked his guest, taking a sip of his glass. He took out a gold bracelet from his pocket and put it on Isabella's thin wrist. I bought it for you. It's beautiful, the girl replied discreetly. Is this how you won the hearts of your mistresses? Were they ready to jump into bed with you? She glanced indifferently at her vis-a-vis. I wonder how much money you intend to spend on my seduction. I expected something more extraordinary. You obviously have problems with imagination. Did you really expect me to fall for this cheap romantic nonsense? No, I'm glad you're paying attention, but I was expecting something a little more sophisticated. I hope. She shivered, showing she was cold. We won't have to spend the night. You. Boiling, Christian. Ungrateful little brat. What have you seen in your life? Dinner aboard a yacht, with a rich man, the limit of your dreams. I can't believe you don't like it here. Why not? Isabella said calmly. I like it, but I dreamed of it when I was 14. Now I've wised up. It's all contrived, momentary. In half an hour we will finish champagne, eat dessert, and then you will try to seduce me, heated by alcohol. How vulgar, and not at all reciprocated. What do you want? Barely containing the anger ready to burst out. Wilson asked, I don't know. Isabella shrugged. Before you hit me in the heart, I want my soul to turn around and soar. For now, she stood up resolutely from the table. I want to go ashore. So everything I've arranged here, he gestured for the musicians to leave. You don't like it? I didn't say I didn't like it. The girl answered evasively. I said it was too corny to win a woman's heart. All right then, let's go home. They said goodbye to the captain, who gave them a long and surprised look. At home, they went to their rooms. What can I seduce you with? Christian was racking his brain. What? A friend of his told him about his unsuccessful attempt to win a girl's heart. You couldn't handle a hottie. You're getting old, brother. You can't use your old tricks, can you? I should have gotten involved with her. Christian cursed in his heart. I don't know what she wants. Think of something unusual, by the way. I give you an idea. Take her abroad. She probably has not been there. The youth of today, they can't wait to go there. For a poor orphan, it's enough to impress her for a year. Why? The man's on fire. It's not a bad idea. If I get what I want, I'll thank you. You don't have to thank me. I was already wondering how it would end. It's been 2 weeks since Christian prepared the trip abroad. Isabella. Smiling enigmatically, he announced, "Tomorrow you and I are going on a trip. I hope we won't have to take a boat this time. I can't reveal all the details to you yet. Trust me. Wear loose clothes so you'll be comfortable. I have one condition." "What's that?" The girl looked at him suspiciously. "I'll blindfold you. Until a certain point, you must not know where we are going." "Agreed?" "Do you have to be blindfolded?" "Yes, otherwise it won't be a surprise." Isabella was blindfolded and brought to the airport. Christian helped her aboard a private plane, and only there was allowed to remove the blindfold. "An airplane?" the girl asked excitedly, looking out the porthole. "All my life I dreamed of flying in an airplane at least once, so I managed to impress you." "Let's put it this way," Isabella said discreetly. "I like the fact that we're going somewhere. I'm sorry," a few hours later, Wilson informed. "I have to blindfold you again." Isabella was elated in her heart. She had dreamed of traveling for so long. They crossed the helicopter. "I want to see where we are." Isabella fidgeted impatiently in the seat. "Be patient." The man stopped her. "Soon you'll see everything." When the engine died down, Wilson untied the blindfold. "Where are we?" Isabella exhaled in disbelief. "On the roof?" "We're on a rooftop in Paris, and there's dinner waiting for us." He held out his hand to her and led the way. The girl's breath was taken away by the beauty. The city was visible as in the palm of her hand. The warm wind was developing her dark hair. It was a little scary, but Isabella didn't give any sign. "Callie will not believe that I saw the Eiffel Tower with my own eyes," the girl thought. Her heart fluttered with joy, but she didn't want to admit that she was overwhelmed by the incredible adventure. Christian seated her at a table. A waiter appeared from somewhere with a bottle of wine. Another brought hot food. The waitstaff tried to be discreet. "Do you like it?" the man asked, seeing how her green eyes lit up. "I can't say I wasn't moved. It's a little trip," Isabella said. "But I don't understand. Why spend money on meaningless things? I wanted to do something nice for myself. To throw so much money away for an hour's dinner? That's just stupid. Are you trying to make me angry on purpose?" The man spoke softly in a voice that didn't bode well. "Yes, anyone in your place would kiss my feet after such a trip and pray to God for me. I don't see a queue of people falling at your feet in the house." The girl sneered. "Don't forget yourself." He flared up. "I can take you back to where I got you. I'm sick of your antics. So you're admitting defeat? What are you trying to do?" "I'm waiting for you to admit you lost my bet. Where's that famous seduction technique you've been bragging about on every corner? All you know how to do is throw money around. Of course, what better way to impress a silly orphan than with crisp bills? That's all you're capable of. It doesn't bother me. But that's it. I'm sick of you." Christian turned white with anger. "We're going back immediately. I didn't know you were so nervous." Looking regretfully at Paris lying at her feet, the girl said, "If we are here, why not enjoy the view of the City of Lovers? If I am not mistaken, it is also called the City of Lights." The walk along the rooftops was over. "The man's up. You ruined it." A few hours later, they were home. You won the bet," the man announced. "I'm trying to shake you up, and you're like an impregnable fortress under siege. Everything's wrong with you. Everything's wrong with you. You don't like jewelry. You don't like flowers because you have to throw them away. I don't understand what you want. Any woman in your place would have been happy to share my bed, but you persist in pretending indifference. I don't want to continue this game. I'm sick of it, and I don't want to see you either. So pack your things and get out of my house. Everything I gave you, keep it, and get the hell out of here. I want to forget you like a bad dream. Don't you ever set eyes on me again. If you say so." The girl shrugged her shoulders. "Don't be afraid. I won't tell anyone that you can't impress a modern woman with anything. If you say another word," clenched his fists, gritted through his teeth Wilson, "I will not vouch for myself. Will you allow yourself to hit a woman?" She made big eyes, and her heart sank into her heels at the sight of the enraged man. Isabella did not try her luck, silently packed up and left. "Well, what have you achieved?" she pondered, walking through the streets of the city. Left at a broken trough, what to do now? In the most difficult moments, she dialed a familiar number. "Hello, girlfriend. Isabella." She heard a cheerful exclamation on the other end of the line. "I was so afraid for you. I thought you weren't answering your cell phone. What if something terrible happened? I've heard such horror stories about your Wilson. He's not mine." Isabella cut it off. "Don't listen to the gossips. Tell me, how are you doing? I'm wandering around town, wondering what I'm gonna do. Christian kicked me out the door." "That's news." Kelly was amazed. "What are you thinking about? Coming to the orphanage? Or do you want to go back to him? You know, I think he fell in love with me like a boy. I got what I wanted. I made him lose his head. That's why he's mad. What about you? What about me? I don't even like him. Then what are you thinking about? Come back. You'll be welcome here. What am I going to do there? It's too late to go to college. I can't find a place to live right away. Wilson left me some money, of course, but how much is enough? And anyway, why am I showing off?" Suddenly she said, "Marriage to such a man would open many doors. A modeling agency certainly wouldn't be an obstacle. Isabella, are you crazy? You don't love him. Can you imagine what it's like to live with someone you don't love? So what? I don't care if he loves me. I'm looking forward to marriage with him." "I don't recognize you, friend," the girl said sadly. "You've never been calculating. I didn't expect to be ambitious myself, but with his help I was able to realize all the plans I had made in the orphanage. Aren't you happy for me? His money will open any door. Isn't that what we dreamed of? Are you really willing to live with a man you don't love? His love is enough for the two of us." Isabella shrugged. "I've been tormented by doubts, and now that I've talked to you, I'm sure I must go back to him." "Isabella, come to your senses," wailed her friend. "I know what I'm doing. I'm thinking more rationally now than ever. Bye. Thanks for listening." Isabella hurried home. She hesitantly opened the door, afraid of being ostracized, and reappeared. Wilson was sitting at the table. A bottle of whiskey stood beside her, almost half empty. "And that's you?" The man looked at her with a cloudy stare. "Why did you come here? To make fun of me?" "Yes, you failed. Who doesn't? I came to tell you that I've agreed to marry you." "An unexpected decision." He grinned wryly. "I lost, didn't I?" "If you remember, there was a second part to the bet. If you fall in love with me, we go to register the marriage. You do love me, don't you? What does that change? It changes everything. I agreed to be your wife. You haven't changed your mind about marrying me, have you?" "Change your mind?" Christian sobered up immediately. "Yes, I've been dreaming of calling you my wife for months." He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a gold ring with a large diamond. "You see, I even bought a ring for my future wife. I didn't think it would come in handy so soon." He stood up, walked over to Isabella, took her hand, and put the expensive ring on her ring finger. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," Isabella answered decisively. though it felt as if she had jumped into a whirlpool. Isabella, hello. Hear the woman in the phone, a familiar voice of a friend. Hello, sobbing Isabella answered. Are you crying? Kelly was worried. I hate him. The woman confessed. He ruined my whole life. He hit me. Again? Terrified, exclaimed the girlfriend. Yes, Isabella cried. He came in drunk. I just asked him where he'd been all night, and then he started. He yelled that it was none of my business, and then he hit me. Good thing my son didn't see. I don't understand what happened to him. You always said he loved you. He did, but then it went away, and it all started when I had Brian. He still can't forgive me for finishing college, and I wanted to study. I wasn't going to bury myself in housework. He didn't like it. Good for you for not giving in and finishing your degree, even if it was by correspondence. It's a popular specialty, finance and credit. If something happens, you can always provide for yourself and your son. That's when we started to have disagreements. He was jealous of every pillar. You should have seen how mad he got when I hired a nanny for our boy so I could study. That's when he started hitting the bottle. He'd get drunk. He'd get out of control. The first time he hit me was when I accused him of cheating. You should have heard the way he screamed. I thought he was gonna kill me. Since then, he's never been shy about laying a hand on me. I don't envy you. I think I'm happy. I never felt happy, and now I don't feel happy at all. Alcohol has changed him beyond recognition. No trace of his former love for me. He's disappeared from home more and more often. I know for a fact that he spends his time in the company of strange women. Do you know how disgusting it is to see him with lipstick on his collar? Are you going to put up with that? No, of course not. I kept quiet for a long time, hoping he'd come to his senses, but every year it gets worse. How does he run the firm? That's the point. The firm was starting to die. I realized if I didn't take over, we'd go bankrupt sooner or later. You're doing great. You're going to do great. Yeah, but I've never worked a day in my specialty. So what? Prove to him and to yourself that you're worth something. You were the smartest among us. You can do it. Isabella puzzled over which side of the firm to revitalize. The first thing she decided to do was to talk to her husband about her son. Christian, I need to consult with you. Having had a moment when he was relatively sober, the woman spoke. What do you want from me? He was irritated, his head ached, he wanted a drink, but Isabella had locked herself in the study with him and wouldn't let him have one. Give me a drink, demanded the man. No, the woman said firmly. Let's talk first. You didn't get anything mixed up. What are you doing bossing me around? Have you forgotten where you belong? I might remind you, if you don't listen to me now, we both risk the abyss. She bravely endured his ominous stare. Well, speak, yes, quickly. I want to send my son to study abroad. What on earth are you talking about? The Christian burst into a fit of rage. I will not give my consent. You'll have to agree. Isabella said calmly, I'm sending him away because I don't have the opportunity to pay much attention to him. Explain? If you don't know, our firm's business is bad. You don't have time to deal with it. You've had other interests lately. The woman sneered. None of your business. Christian snapped at her. I'm fed up with you. Do you think I've forgotten that you decided to study without consulting me? My knowledge will come in handy now. I want to try to keep our firm afloat. What? The man laughed. You. What do you know about business? Without me, you're nothing. If I want, our business will go up, and you take care of the house and the child, and do not interfere where you are not asked. Right now, I need to intervene. I demand that you authorize me to sign documents. On what grounds do you demand it? On the grounds that I'm your lawfully wedded wife, you're going to ruin the firm. We won't lose anything. It'll be dead soon enough, and if I can save the business, fine, to hell with you. You've already succeeded once with me." The man snorted. "Call a notary. I'll issue a permit. After all, I can always cancel all contracts. I think you won't have to blush for me." And Isabella began to master. Christian at first freaked out, and when he realized that his wife gradually began to get everything, sang blackly of his own impotence. How many times? The woman was indignant. "You drink every day. I need your help so much." "Why? You're doing a great job already. But you're experienced, you know the firm inside and out, and I have to learn everything all over again." "I told you you couldn't do it. I can handle it." Isabella was stubborn. "Just don't drink, please." She had no idea that a healthy-looking man could fall victim to an insidious disease. One night she stayed late at work. "Why is it so quiet at home?" Isabella wondered as she entered the living room. "Christian, where are you? Did you go to bed already? I need your advice. I think I've figured out why things aren't going well." She looked into the kitchen. Her husband was nowhere to be found. She opened the bedroom door and was horrified. "Christian, what's wrong?" Isabella rushed to her husband, who was lying on the floor with his arm tucked under him. "Christian, don't frighten me." The man mumbled, writhing in pain as his wife tried to lift him up. "Christian?" Isabella cried, startled by the realization. "You're having a stroke." "Wait, I'll call an ambulance." She called the doctor, asked the guards to move her husband to the couch. "Unfortunately, you're right. Christian is having a stroke." "Confirmed my worst guesses, doctor. His right side is paralyzed. I'll prescribe therapy, of course, but whether he'll make a full recovery, I can't say. We don't know exactly how long it was before you found him. The outcome of the disease depends on that." "Doctor." Isabella grabbed the man's arm fearfully. "I beg you, don't tell anyone that Christian is paralyzed. If partners and competitors find out about his condition, our business will be ruined. I'll repay you whatever you say, and I'll pay you for your silence." "Good." The doctor looked at the woman in surprise. "It's up to you. You're in shock now. We'll talk later. One more favor. Help me find a professional nurse for him." "That won't be a problem. I promise I'll find the best one. What am I supposed to do now?" "Pray to God and don't give up hope. Christian, young man, he'll do fine." Isabella is immersed in business. Not a living soul knew that Christian lay a vegetable in their big house. Only the nurse and the cook were allowed to see him. "Isabella," one day the secretary informed her, "a rival firm wants to see you." "What is it?" Isabella felt a chill go through her. "They didn't say, but they've set up a meeting for tomorrow at the cafe." "Well, let them know I'm ready to meet." "Oh, and tell the chief accountant I'm expecting 6 months' worth of returns." Half an hour later, the chief accountant showed up. "Isabella," he began, "I don't understand why you're digging through old reports." Chuckling to himself in a mustache, the man asked, "Why should such a pretty head have to bother with such dull figures?" "Christian checked them. I don't think you'll find anything interesting there." "I'm interested." Trying not to lose her composure, the woman replied, "To understand why lately we've had lucrative deals fall through, why the materials we partially paid for don't arrive on time. You can answer me these questions, can't you?" "Well, my dear," stretching words and hinting that she knows nothing about the affairs of the construction company, said the chief accountant, "It happens, sometimes deals are broken and suppliers let down. It's all business. I need a full report and analysis of the working firm. If you can't give clear answers to my questions, I won't keep you. You're firing me." The man's eyes widened in surprise. I do not need people who do not cope with their duties, and also let you openly laugh at the head of the firm. You're not the head of the firm. As long as my husband is sick, I am the head of the firm. If you don't want to follow my orders, the door's over there. Do you understand? Instead of helping me to save the firm, you're sticking your fingers in my wheel. Christian is sick, and you're happy to tear up his life's work, you and Greats. My husband has done so much for you. I see you get a good salary, go, work, and that by the evening, the report was on my desk. Isabella said firmly. Shocked by her rebuff, the chief accountant silently went to his office. Can you imagine? The man was indignant. She told me off like a boy. I've been working in this company for 20 years, she, without a year a week, and already in full command. Who is she anyway? Supported his colleague. We have never seen her before in our lives. They say she has not worked. How will she be able to save the company? Did Christian buy her diploma? Yeah, someone gets gold, but she gets a diploma. With that kind of knowledge, she shouldn't be in business. How did she manage to marry Christian? He was a confirmed bachelor. Don't you know how girls like that get married? With a figure like that, a face like that, you could seduce anyone. I can't wait for Christian to come back to us. I know in my heart she'll bring the firm to a standstill. I wonder how she'll sort out the accounts. She probably only knows how to spend money. Why are you going after her? Isabella's got an advocate. Let her try, see if it works out. Christian will be back, and her competitors aren't dormant. You mark my words, they'll try to get their hands on the firm. The next day, Isabella came to the cafe to meet with a representative of a rival firm. What did you want to tell me? Without further ado, the woman asked, How's your health, Christian? By your prayers. I don't think you asked me here to ask about Christian's health. Tell me what you wanted to say. I don't have much time. It has come to our attention, the man spoke softly, that your firm has been experiencing some difficulties in recent months. We'd like to help. Help how? We'd like to buy your firm out of your problems. Why would a pretty woman like you take on a huge business? You don't know much about construction, to put it mildly. Yes, things are a little rough right now, but it's only temporary. Barely restraining, ready to burst out of emotion, said Isabella. We are not going to sell the business. Christian is seriously ill. Will he be able to return to the management of the company? Don't doubt it. He is already on the mend. Perhaps we could meet him then and talk things over. Maybe he'd be interested in our offer. He's got his health to worry about, and the problems at work could aggravate his illness. Shouldn't you be so worried about my husband's health? The doctors are doing all the necessary procedures to get him back on his feet. And by the way, they don't recommend disturbing him. As I said, we have no plans to sell the firm. My husband is in the loop, and I'm coordinating with him. As far as I'm concerned, the business is in a critical state, and we're offering a good price. No, don't persuade me. My husband will soon get back on his feet and figure things out on his own, but in the meantime, I'm doing a good job of running the firm. I hear the employees don't trust you very much. I wonder how you know so much about our firm. Oh, I get it. There's an inside man on the payroll. Let's not talk about that. The man avoided answering. If you'll excuse me, I have to go. Isabella got up from the table. We have nothing more to talk about, so you'll consider our offer? I won't be able to offer such a favorable price next time. My answer is no. Isabella flew to work. We have a mole. How did I not realize? She thought. That explains everything. My job is to find it, and the sooner the better. She meticulously studied every document, even taking her work home. There in silence, she worked easier than under the gaze of subordinates, who frankly laughed behind her back, skeptical of her ability to pull the firm out of a series of bad deals. Imagine that. She complained to her friend. "They don't take me seriously." "No wonder." Callie laughed. "With the way you look. Who's gonna believe you're good at accounting?" "That you're so smart. I have to find the mole, or our competitors will be working ahead of us. Think, analyze, concentrate, and then everything will work out." And Isabella, day after day, got deeper and deeper into her work. "Explain it to me, please." Looking at the contracts, she asked the chief engineer, "How come we refuse to build a shopping center on such a profitable site?" So their geodesist surveyed and concluded that the soil is not suitable for construction. Then why did the competitors start construction on this very territory? "I don't know." The man was embarrassed. "Who made the decision not to build?" "That's how he stopped talking." "The address of the surveyors who did the report." "So he hesitated." "That's right. Their firm closed down." "How is that possible?" "Why are you being so secretive? Get me the chief accountant right away." "He paid for the work done, right?" "He must know the address of the company." The chief accountant entered the office cautiously, explained how it happened that the firm, which made a conclusion about the state of the soil on the site on which they planned to build a shopping center, closed immediately after signing the papers. "Give me its address. I'll go to deal with it myself." "So know the address?" mumbled the chief accountant. "I wonder how many plots we lost because of this fake firm." The men looked at each other in silence. "You both immediately write a letter of resignation." Isabella ordered quietly but firmly, "You have no right to fire us." The chief engineer shrieked. "We were hired by Christian." "Don't you dare poke me. I'm in charge of personnel here now." "Get out, both of you." "Isabella." The receptionist came flying in. "How could you fire the most responsible employees?" "Christian wouldn't allow it." Christian didn't realize that these responsible employees had recently started working for the competition. Simply put, they were selling out, betraying their boss. "If you don't agree with my decision, I will quickly find a replacement for you." Isabella looked at the girl expectantly. She shamefully kept silent. "That's fine. Now you need to find replacements for these two honorable people. It is better if it will be found among our employees." "Okay, I understand. But what should I tell the staff?" "I'll figure it out." The girl left, and Isabella took a deep breath, then got up and went to the conference room. "Gather me the heads of departments in accounting. I need a lawyer immediately." "Right away." The secretary looked at Isabella with respect. 10 minutes later, everyone was gathered in the hall. "I fired 2 employees. After a thorough investigation of the firm, it turned out that they were working for competitors. Now I believe our business will be more successful. I need your support. Christian has stepped aside for now. I'll need time to sort things out. If anyone is unhappy with the woman at the helm of the firm, they can report it immediately. The rest of you, I demand full commitment. If you have any candidates in mind, I don't mind reviewing their resumes. Any questions? Then let's get to work." The employees came out of the meeting puzzled. "So much for the model." They marveled. "And we laughed at her, but she was so clever. Even Christian could not find the moles, and she quickly identified them. So how could those who started the firm with him be suspicious? Don't get too excited before the competition finds out Christian's doing badly. If no one tells, maybe it'll be all right. But the competitors weren't dormant. Wilson's business was too tasty. They were getting closer and closer to the firm, probing for weaknesses." Isabella realized their lost interest was temporary. Isabella. One day, a secretary came flying into the office. "I tried to stop them, but You shouldn't try to stop me." Pushing the secretary away, a handsome young man entered the office with a brisk stride. Isabella noted his lean figure, thick, dark hair, and brown eyes that glowed with mockery. He sat down in the chair uninvited. "It's nothing to worry about." The woman calmed the secretary. "I'll take care of it. Who are you?" she asked as the door closed behind the girl. "My name is Charles. I'm offering to sell me your firm. What makes you think I'm going to sell it? I'm aware of your problems. You're not the first to know my problems, but I'm the first to tell you we're gonna get this thing back on track. If you have no more questions for me, please leave the office. You're interfering with my work, or I'll have to call security. I know Christian is paralyzed. He can't go back to work, and you don't know anything about construction. I'm amazed at your knowledge." Isabella looked mockingly at the intruder, but her heart clenched with fear. "But Christian will be fine, and I'm not bad with finances, for your information. I'll make sure you can't sign any lucrative contracts. Are you threatening me? In return, when Christian comes back to the firm, and he will, you'll be in trouble. We have a good reputation. You will not be able to ruin the business. If you do not leave, I will dig up dirt on you. I've already got material on how you've been diverting customers away from us through front men. I'll make it public. Are you willing to risk it?" "You bet your ass I will. Christian will back me up. He knows everything that goes on around the firm. If you try to destroy us, I won't stand by and retaliate." "Bitch," the man hissed. "It was nice to meet you." The woman smiled through force. She was nervous, her lips trembling. "I dare not delay you any longer. I'm leaving, but I'll be back. Good riddance." Left alone, Isabella, without strength, leaned back in her chair and cried. "Isabella, are you all right?" Alarmed, her secretary asked, entering the office after the guest had left. "Would you like me to make you some tea?" "Thank you, I'd appreciate it." "And you are good," the secretary said, putting a cup with steaming tea. "No one believed that you could manage the firm. I didn't believe it myself." Tiredly replied the woman, "I had to learn no one knows what will happen to us next. I will not be left alone for a long time, these businessmen. You have successfully won the first battle. I think this is just the beginning. How much do I miss Christian? He's been in a borderline state for almost a month. There was a phone call. Isabella?" The woman on the phone heard the excited voice of the nurse. "Christian, he's awake." "Roger, on my way." "What's wrong?" the secretary asked, seeing the change in her face. Christian came to his senses. "I'm leaving now. Don't tell anyone yet." Isabella hurried home. She didn't know how she saw her husband and was afraid to meet him. "Are you here?" He turned his head at the sound of the creaking door. Christian spoke slurred. Isabella rather read his lips what he said. He was pale, a wry grin on his face, saliva flowing helplessly from the corner of his mouth. "I'm glad you've come to your senses." She crouched carefully beside him on the bed, wiped his chin with a napkin. "Leave us alone," she asked the nurse. "How are you?" "There is no more of me, just a semblance of a human being." The man tried to smile. His face twisted even more. "What about the firm?" "Did you manage to sell it?" "I managed to save the firm." "You did?" Christian's eyes flashed first with bewilderment, then surprise, then joy, then tears. "I didn't believe in you. I was sure we were ruined. Think about it. How could I let everything you've built up over the years go to waste? How did you do it?" "I scrutinized the documents and found the moles." "Who?" The man marveled. "Who are they?" "Your main assistants." "I don't believe it. It's a good thing I didn't have an old friendship with them. I couldn't trust anyone, So I evaluated everyone with a cold head, and that's how I found the traitors. And our business immediately went better. The staff found in the firm, people responsible, most importantly, they believed me. It was difficult to shut the mouth of competitors. They were ready to swallow us, but it was not to be. I am not one of the fearful. I remember. Christian grinned with difficulty. I was able to fend off the first 2 attacks. The woman was silent, but we hope for your recovery. That you've come to your senses is a good sign. I'm not deceived. He looked at his wife carefully, and I realize my present condition is only a temporary improvement. I feel I don't have much time left. Don't say that. Hotly, Isabella exclaimed. You'll make it. No, I'm done for. I'm not getting my hopes up. He closed his eyes and was silent. Tell me, did you love me a little? He asked, after a moment's pause, looking pitifully at his wife. Don't lie to me. I want to know the truth. No. Quietly confessed the woman. I never loved you. I knew I felt you didn't love me, but I had hoped so much to be wrong. You're legendary in business circles, even have your own admirers. Ah, she picked up on Charles' mocking tone. I thought you were here to take over the firm again. I have another suggestion. Why don't we merge our firms? I'm doing fine. I don't need anyone's help. Isabella. Charles came very close to her, handed her flowers. She buried her face in them, savoring the fragrance. I liked you right away, that memorable meeting. I didn't expect to be rebuffed. I was told you were a beautiful doll with no brains, but I realized from the first minute that you were a smart and confident woman. I was afraid to admit even to myself that I was in love. You know, it happens, but you were married at the time, and then the funeral. I didn't want to be intrusive. I decided to wait, but now you're free. Why can't I tell you that I like you? And you come to me so easily after the threats I heard from you in my office? Forgive me, I'm ready to beg your forgiveness. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. In the fight against the competition, all means are good. I'm sorry. I realized long ago that I was wrong. You have a good tongue. Isabella laughed. It's the excitement. Charles confessed. What is it? Can I expect reciprocation? Charles, the woman grew serious. I do not want to give you hope, so I confess at once, I am not ready for a serious relationship. I've had some unfortunate experiences in married life. I'm just now beginning to live, to breathe. I was deprived of all this for many years to break free from dependence on my husband. It cost me a lot of labor and nerves. You can't imagine what I've been through. To go back into the care of another man? No way. I assure you, I won't restrict your freedom. I wish I could believe you, but I can't. Is there any hope that someday you'll reciprocate? I don't know. We don't know each other very well. Well, let's get to know each other. Charles came to life. I'm inviting you to a restaurant tonight. No need. Isabella headed for the car. I like to have dinner at home with my son. How do you feel about children, by the way? I didn't know you had a son. The man was surprised. Christian never talked about him. He probably never said anything about me either. The woman grinned. Yes, I have a son, and you'll have to earn his favor if you're going to court me. Did I scare you? So you'll let me court you? I'm ready. The persistent suitor has perked up. Invite me to visit. I want to make sure that you are not only smart and beautiful, but also a good cook. If that's the case, then you're definitely my woman. Isabella got into the car, started it, carefully placed the bouquet next to her. The man looked at her with regret. Suddenly, she rolled down the window. If you want, come to visit me on Sunday afternoon. I'll introduce you to my son and feed you lunch. I'll definitely come. Charles exclaimed joyfully, looking at the car in which the amazing woman was sitting. "I won't let you go anywhere." He promised. "I will do everything I can to make you learn to trust again. My love can warm your soul. I promise you that we will be happy."